Hi, this is Ashin. Welcome to the third part titled What if Naruto inherited the Sharingan, the Wood Release, and Kurama's Rage? If you haven't watched the first and second parts yet, be sure to check them out first. The links are in the description below.
This is a travesty of justice, Naruto remarked, showing no emotion whatsoever. Anyway, I don't think you're very familiar with that word, the Uzumaki added mockingly. The cage didn't reply and stared at a piece of paper. You're here because you assaulted some tacky villagers, and that's a crime. You're a guest, so don't abuse our hospitality. Fu's grandfather added, you're just like my granddaughter, arrogant and self-important. But you need to understand that you're not all-powerful. Yeah, we'll see about that, the redhead chuckled, under Fu's amused gaze and Jiraiya's disillusioned one. Get to the point, I have other things to do. You know I could punish you. Throw you in prison for a very long time, years, even decades. Diplomatic immunity. As Konoha's Jinchūriki, I'm protected by your laws. Lock me up, and my village will come for me. They won't leave my demon in your hands. The Uzumaki joked under the council's surprised gaze. They looked at the Sannin, who made no sign of denial. The Takikage sighed, looking at his granddaughter. Did she have the power to defeat him if things got tough? The green-haired girl shook her head from side to side. She wasn't stupid, he was stronger. Besides, she wouldn't attack him, especially not after the nights they'd spent together. Very well. The Takigaker master breathed angrily. This guy really seemed prepared for anything. In that case, there's nothing I can do. Except expel you from my city. I don't want to see you here again. If you insist, but I'd like to make a request. The leader raised an eyebrow. Actually, I'd really like Fu to come with me. As if I'd let our Jinchūriki go off with someone like you. The Takikage exclaimed, straightening up. Just because you're Konoha's Jinchūriki doesn't mean I'm going to let you have our Jinchūriki without a word. We're not that stupid. He walked around the table to stand facing the young man and met his gaze. You know why I'm the leader. Because I know how to make the important decisions when necessary, and she won't be leaving this city, do you understand? It seems to me that Fu is very violent. Why not use this training to teach her to control her anger? I do it with my student, and it's paying off. Usually, Jiraiya informed him. I could very well teach her self-control and temperance. It would be just as beneficial to your village as it would be to my student, who would progress better if he had a comrade in the same situation. But I promise to train and help her become a better Jinchūriki. The Takikage looked down, his gaze falling upon two incandescent red eyes, a blood-red whirlwind that completely engulfed him without touching him in the slightest. Well, I think I have nothing to add. Master, you must be joking, shouted an advisor under Fu's amused gaze and the Kyuubi's blasé stare. We cannot part with our Jinchūriki, it would be reckless and… Silence, yelled the Takikage. I am the leader of this village. I decide what is best for Taki. If Fu stays, she could be just as much a danger as a weapon, and we all know which way she leans. The Takikage looked at Jiraiya. I entrust her to you, so make sure she returns to us a well-behaved kunoichi, is that clear? Of course. Naruto smiled as he turned to leave. When she returned, she would have transformed. Chapter 42, A Kick in the Anthill. Walking calmly down the street, the green-haired young woman advanced along a dark path when she came across a young man, visibly impatient. How long have you been here? The dark-haired man sighed, glaring at her with his white eyes. I've been here for over 10 minutes, but that's nothing. Why are you late? The king has decided to move our plans forward. Everything isn't exactly as we wanted, but we'll manage. He took the key and prepared to open the gates of hell. The Hyuga nodded. As the king told you, our plans aren't antagonistic, quite the opposite. You seek to overthrow an institution, and our goal is similar. You seek to avenge someone you cared about, and we seek to restore balance and justice. You, like us, have a purpose dictated by what has been taken from us. With a wave of his hand, the dark-haired man cut the discussion short. Don't waste your breath. I've more or less understood what you want to do, and there's no need to tell me. I'm in. I accept your help, and I offer you mine. The green-haired girl smiled as she turned to walk toward their destination. In that case, let's go. Hinata is with Naruto, and that Hanabi is traveling with her mother. Today, the sun sets on the Hyuga clan. You're crazy. Jiraiya shouted as Naruto advanced into the forest, his body seemingly ablaze with anger. Tsunade followed her godson. She would have preferred to stay with her daughter or deal with the Senju clan, but now she had to calm Naruto down. He could easily do something foolish, and that was exactly what he was trying to do by holding that strange scroll. Naruto, it's too early. Why would my father have given me Kurama if it wasn't so we could team up? I'll show this whole village that they don't mess with what belongs to me. Jiraiya sighed as he tried to catch up with his godson, who was still 2 meters ahead. Naruto, stop this nonsense. How is this nonsense, Tsunade? Wouldn't you also like to destroy this pathetic clan that attacked your daughter? The blonde opened her mouth, but said nothing. He was right. Jiraiya, do you think it's right to make a child suffer because they've been marked by fate? Do you think it's right to try to abuse a woman because she's more powerful and has something you don't? Can you still look at this village and recognize what you stood for? He gritted his teeth. Did my parents die to protect such values? No. Minato and Kushina believed in the splendor of this village. They had faith in this institution and in this ideal of peace and unity. Jiraiya replied softly. Your parents believed that the villagers of Konoha were equal and that they respected one another. Minato protected the values that gave birth to this village. A place where new life could flourish, without war ravaging and cutting down young lives. That's it, Godfather. That's exactly what this village lacks. When Konoha was created, the world was at war, and it was the fear of death that kept this village united. The Konoha you protected is no more, it has become a cancer, another symptom of this disease called man, and it's time for the vaccine. The Uzumaki exclaimed, arriving in a ravaged room carved into the rock. It was quite a distance from Konoha, but they could still get there quickly. The room was empty and dirty, clearly abandoned for a long time. Only a strange table stood there, a gray table with 2 black bars protruding roughly halfway down its length. Inscriptions were placed on the walls. Tsunade looked around in surprise. She had seen similar tables before, but in a hospital. Wait, this is a workroom. Exactly. 16 years ago, I was born here. He sat down on the table and crossed his legs as he opened the scroll to see the key to his seal. It's only natural that I should be reborn in the same place. Maeko wiped away the tears that streamed down her cheeks as Saya and Hinata stood beside her. Her 2 friends were there to comfort her, but neither of them had the slightest idea what to say or do in this situation, and in a way, it was kind of normal. They never thought they would find themselves in such a situation one day. Damn it, the blonde moaned, more disheartened by her tears than by the situation. I should have been more careful. You couldn't have known. And besides, the important thing is that you're okay. The Hyuga reassured her, rubbing her back. We're with you, and even Naruto is supporting you. I don't know what he went to do, but we can trust him. No, the young woman with blonde hair replied, wiping away her tears with her hands. Naruto is already overdoing it. He told us he wouldn't always be there for us. I'll take care of it myself. I'll go back and show him that he shouldn't underestimate me. Maeko exclaimed, her brows furrowed as chakra slowly enveloped her body, as if to emphasize her determination. I won't let you down, Maeko. Saya announced, rising to take her katana. I'm coming with you. No way. The blonde snapped. You're pregnant, Saya. We're not going to let you risk your life and hers. Don't worry, I can still defend myself. Hinata smiled as she straightened up to join her Uchiha friend, who was already ready to leave. Maeko, we're ready to fight for you. Maeko closed her eyes, a smile spreading across her lips. Despite the situation, the fear she felt, and the anger that assailed her, she was so happy to know she had the support of her friends. Of her true family. Thank you. Saya smiled, extending her hand. Maeko, you, Hinata, and I are the same. We're united, and we'll never give up. Maeko took her friend's hand and stood up with her help. Then, resolute, the 3 friends set off toward the Senju estate. This was in contrast to the Hyuga estate, which was also undergoing a major overhaul. The journey was long, not because the domain was far away, but because they were deep in introspection. They were preparing to face opponents who were certainly stronger than them, or at least outnumbered. But they weren't afraid for themselves, they trusted each other, they were there for each other, and they had faith in their abilities. All 3 had received training that would allow them to go the distance, even against Anbu. Besides, their ambition wasn't to fight, but to talk. After all, you can never be sure of anything. The only person they were a little afraid of wasn't even born yet and was still developing in one of their wombs. After about 20 minutes, they found themselves in front of the Senju clan's gates. One of the 2 guards smiled when he saw Maeko and approached to speak with her. So, you changed. The depraved look doesn't suit you anymore. The young blonde gritted her teeth as one of the potential rapists from earlier in the day let his gaze wander over her outfit, which she had replaced with the same version, but clean. So you've decided to let yourself go this time. I think you bark more than you bite, little dog, Hinata exclaimed, a defiant smile plastered on her face. The brunette frowned. We're not here to talk to you. Where's Yukimura? The guard chuckled, bowing towards her. You want to talk to our leader. You poor fool. He raised his hand before Hinata whirled around and delivered a powerful uppercut to the brunette's jaw. He gritted his teeth as he was thrown backward. His teammate approached and unleashed a spinning kick that flew towards Saya. She didn't even look down as she blocked the blow aimed at her stomach, staring straight into the eyes of the dark-haired man. "Don't touch my baby," the brunette growled through gritted teeth as the young man cried out when black flames erupted on his face. "I will kill anyone who tries to harm him," the young woman threatened, revealing her left eye marked with a strange symbol resembling a stylized triskelion, leaving an opening to reveal the pupil. Fu and Neji stood before the gate of the Hyuga estate. The two were fixed on the immense barrier before them. The dark-haired man bowed slightly before extending his hand back to deliver a powerful palm strike. Hake Kuheikisho. The wood bent before exploding into a shower of pieces and splinters that scattered across the entrance garden. The clan members turned their heads to watch the two people enter the grounds as if no one stood in their way, almost as if they were simply strolling by. It was true that the guard was more relaxed at night, but for an attack to take place within the Hyuga compound was truly foolish and suicidal. One of them turned his head to see the adversaries. It's a Hyuga," shouted a guard, a member of the branch family. Neji smiled as he watched the dozen or so guards position themselves in front of him and Fu. The dark-haired man turned his head toward his temporary partner. He wasn't even surprised to see her smile with the same brightness as if she were looking at a brand new toy. "I'll take care of my uncle, can you handle that?" The green-haired girl laughed, cracking her knuckles, as if she'd been waiting for this moment. "No worries, I'm really in the mood to relax, and I think I'll enjoy breaking some bones." Neji vanished in a gust of wind. A member of the Hyuga clan turned to follow him, but instead he was met with two orange eyes. His eyes widened as a fist slammed into his nose, the blow sending him flying a good 4 meters. The green-haired girl smiled, as if she were relishing the groan of pain, before taking a scroll from her hip, activating it, and producing a staff with a kind of ball at each end. "Why not start playing?" A Hyuga started running towards Fu. She kicked her weapon with the tip of her foot, sending it spinning completely and crashing into the enemy's jaw. She reversed the rotation with a kick of her heel and struck hard on the top of the skull, smiling wider as she heard the bone crack under the weight of the metal ball. She tightened her grip on her weapon, the two golden orbs glowing as lightning shot from it. She released the staff with one hand while lowering her grip with the other to deliver a sweeping blow that struck those too close to her. They cried out as the electric arc ripped through them before she leapt into the air to bring down the other end of her weapon and strike the ground. The lightning within the bodies of the paralyzed Hyuga attracted the lightning emanating from their opposing weapons, illuminating the earth before arcs of electricity shot from the ground, piercing them with a thunderous roar. They fell to the ground, mouths agape and steaming. Fu stared at the corpses sprawled on the ground before chuckling softly. She placed a foot on a Hyuga head and contracted her limb to shatter the charred skull, scattering ashes across the floor. "Is that all you have to offer? Can't we have a bit more of a challenge?" The green-haired girl yelled, as other white-eyed ninjas approached. Judging by their age, the appearance of their attire, and their fighting stances, they must be Jonin or equivalent. What a shame that rank means nothing when fighting a Jinchūriki. Fu whirled her weapon to the ground and leaned on it, a huge smile stretching across her lips, as if she was enjoying it more than just being amused. She unzipped her off-white jacket, she was clearly getting too hot. Come on, I'd really like a challenge." She bit her lower lip, unleashing a wave of excitement throughout her body. "I feel so hot. I hope you'll rise to the occasion." A Hyuga lunged forward as the young woman fell, then pivoted to raise her weapon. The opponent couldn't avoid the powerful staff strike that hit him squarely in the jaw. However, adding to that the earth release affinity, he felt his lower jaw snap away from his face. "Oops, I have to be careful," the green-haired girl smiled. "Naru doesn't like it when I break my toys too easily." She laughed. "Try to hold out until tomorrow." With a war cry, they charged at the green-haired girl. She kneed her staff, splitting the weapon in two, which she then grasped like tonfas. She spun around completely, sending her weapons crashing into her opponents' necks. Without further ado, she leapt into the air, unleashing a flurry of kicks, and followed up with a backflip, swinging her leg to strike her enemy's collarbone and shatter it effortlessly. A Hyuga clan member appeared before her, ready to attack. The 8 trigrams 64 palms. He struck, delivering all 64 blows with astonishing speed and precision, demonstrating his mastery of the art and his desire to kill his opponent. After she received the final blows, she staggered slightly backward, helpless as another attacker arrived from behind. The 8 trigrams 64 palms. She was caught once more in this violent assault from behind before the 4 other Jonin of the clan repeated the attack several times to end this senseless and illogical fight. "This, you miserable whore, is what happens when the ignorant prey on our clan." A sneer rose from Fu's body. The young woman burst into laughter as she rose effortlessly and with breathtaking speed. With one hand, she seized the neck of the Hyuga who was speaking to her, and with a simple flick of her fingers, she crushed his throat, causing him to cough up a spray of blood that covered his face. What do you think? The young Jinchūriki mocked, letting the Hyuga's body fall back down before turning to face the other enemies. You are nothing but miserable humans, none of you can defeat me. She laughed before caressing his cheek to collect the blood and licking his fingertips. Come on, faster, stronger, I want you to show me that you are men, real men. Satisfy me, or I will eat you. The green-haired woman moaned before retrieving her weapon and combining it into a staff. A red aura surrounded her to unblock her tenketsu before she rushed at her enemies. Neji pushed open the door to his uncle's office and wasn't even surprised to see the 4 clan advisors. He walked calmly into the room before meeting the gaze of each person present. It would seem that Hizashi's son isn't following in his father's footsteps, one of the elders muttered. When you see that his father gave his life for our family, and he tries to bring about its downfall. But well, it takes more than that to bring down the Hyuga clan. I wouldn't bet on it. A sneer came from one of the elders. He raised 2 fingers, concentrating his chakra. Neji cried out, putting his hand to his forehead as the elder approached. Do you know why you all have this mark on your foreheads? The elder asked as Neji continued to whine. So that you don't forget your place, you are neither birds nor cages, you are but a shadow. You live in the shadow of our greatness, the Hyuga clan, the main branch I mean, is above you. But our power is envied, and you are here for that reason, and that. Your father understood that well. The branch family must die for the main family. Unfortunately, it seems you've decided to take your father's teachings the wrong way. He tugged Neji's hair to look him straight in the eyes. Your father never tried to tell you that you had to choose your destiny, but rather that we decided it for you. A smile stretched across the young man's lips. Then I will decide for you. Neji unleashed a powerful palm strike charged with wind chakra. The impact was powerful, 2 trails of chakra and blood erupted from the elder's back. He opened his mouth wide to say something, but only a groan escaped his lips. The Juken attack, combined with the futon, had exploded his heart while severing the main arteries. No matter how skilled the doctor or any possible transplants, it was impossible to save him. The elder fell to the ground as Neji rested his head on his back. Understand this. I am not like you. You are nothing but self-sufficient individuals, vegetating in an illusion of omnipotence and invulnerability under the pretext of possessing a special talent. Your power comes from the blood of your family, from their pain and sorrow. He smiled coldly as he delivered a powerful blow to the elder's lifeless body. Mine comes from my hatred. From my rage. I live only to make you pay for everything I have suffered since the day I was born. He removed his headband, revealing a forehead free of any marks, and threw the plaque to the ground, clearly demonstrating that he no longer had anything to do with Konoha and was only there to settle a personal matter. What are you trying to do? Hiyashi asked, standing up, followed by the other 3 clan members. Neji just smiled, amused. Are you planning to try and overthrow the clan? Fight the elders and me when you're just a jonin. The young Hyuga assumed a fighting stance before lunging forward, quickly crossing the path and joining the advisors. He punched one of them in the jaw, groaning in pain as he jerked his head back from the force of the uppercut. Pivoting, he landed a powerful hook to the stomach of another elder. He quickly retreated, bringing his elbows back and striking the ribs of the 3rd elder. The trio, thrown off balance, fell forward, giving Neji the opportunity to unleash a powerful kaiden that sent his elders flying to the 4 corners of the room. How did you do that? You're just a jonin. What words from self-important people who wallow in an illusion of omnipotence and invulnerability, don't you understand? Neji asked simply, straightening up to face his uncle. These idiots thought I was just a jonin-level Hyuga and that, from the heights of their omnipotence, they couldn't possibly lose to me. He laughed. Nothing can stop me. You only fuel my hatred and fury, there's no way you're getting away with this. He assumed a fighting stance and activated his Byakugan. Hiyashi sighed, shaking his head from side to side. What idiocy. Sorry, brother, I'll have to kill your son. Hiyashi assumed a fighting stance before activating his Byakugan. Without a word, they lunged forward. Quickly, they unleashed a flurry of strikes and counters. The uncle had the advantage of more experience, but he lacked Neji's speed and reflexes. Blows flew and chakra discharges erupted in every direction. More than a fight, it was almost a dance, a deadly yet magnificent dance. Like in a ballet, the fluid movements of the gentle fist echoed and clashed with one another. Neji shifted his weight to avoid the palm strike aimed at his face and initiated a kaiden to gain momentum before landing a punch to his uncle's left ribs. He smiled at the significant crack and reversed the rotation of his kaiden to deliver a knee strike to the elder's right side. He groaned in pain before his nephew countered, creating another rotation to land a right hook to his enemy's jaw, eliciting a muffled cry. He finished his spinning sequence with 3 complete rotations before landing a powerful left hook to Hiyashi's temples. The final blow was strong enough to send him flying and crashing against the solid wood desk. Hisashi's son smiled, wiping the sweat from his brow. The uncle struggled to his feet, quickly assessing his condition. 4 broken ribs on his left side, a dislocated jaw on the left as well, and likely a pneumothorax. It was a very bad situation. Hiyashi finally managed to stand and face his opponent. "I thought you were supposed to kill me, uncle," Neji announced with a smirk and a sharp tone. You're very skilled," he resumed his fighting stance with some apprehension. Hisashi, his brother, had always been the best. He was more skilled, stronger, faster. In short, Hisashi had always been a genius. He'd so wanted his brother to become the clan leader, but birth order had decided otherwise. Now, Hisashi had to face his nephew, who was far from weak. Hisashi was indeed the child's father. This wasn't how he was going to win. Unfortunately, Neji's younger age meant he hadn't experienced the problems associated with aging. This meant he had less trouble fighting those older than him, and, as strange as it may seem, Neji seemed to have a better grasp of the clan's secrets and used them with greater ease. It was almost like Hinata's. Yes, that was it. He had such mastery and fluidity in his actions that it resembled what Hinata did with her techniques. Did that bitch have anything to do with the attack? After all, she wasn't there right now, so she must have been warned. "I'm going to kill you, Neji. Then I'll kill Hinata for this betrayal. Hinata has nothing to do with it, she doesn't even know anything. We just made sure Hanabi and Hikari-sama weren't there." Seeing his uncle's surprised expression, he added, "In the darkness you've plunged me into, there's only ever been one person who reached out to me." Neji was training, striking a scarecrow with a series of powerful, chakra-charged palm strikes. No matter what happened, no matter the pain and distress he felt, he had to purge himself of all the anger that lived inside him. His blows rained down before he cried out in pain, bringing his hands down and falling to his knees. Both his hands burned and his palms were bleeding. But more than the pain, the blood on his hands reminded him of his own weakness and that cursed day when he lost everything. "No, I'm not finished. You're talented, Neji," a soft voice whispered. The little boy turned his head to find his aunt smiling gently at him. He frowned, turning his head away. Clearly, he didn't want to talk to his aunt. "It'll soon be 2 years, Neji." "No, it's been 2 years. Today marks 2 years," the 6-year-old boy breathed harshly. He stood up and turned to leave before a pair of arms closed around him. He gritted his teeth and flailed about. "Let go of me. This clan has taken someone we all from us. You're not the only one who's been separated from loved ones," the brunette said, stroking the boy's hair. "But you'll see, and you'll understand, that what hurts you now will one day become your strength. Thanks to these trials you're going through, you'll become bigger, stronger, and more just." Neji fell silent, lowering his eyes and ceasing to move as he felt his aunt's tears splash against his neck. "You're sad, so you can cry, I won't judge you. Purge yourself of this sadness and make it your strength." Neji felt his eyes burn as something warm trickled down his cheeks and onto his lips, each drop tasting salty. "I will never abandon you. Despite what you may believe, Neji, I love you." "Hikari." Hiyashi sighed, rubbing his forehead. "I knew they had made a mistake separating her from him." Neji raised an eyebrow, not understanding what his uncle was saying. "Hikari had been chosen to be my wife, the bearer of my children. But the first few times I tried to impregnate her, when I had to honor our marriage by taking her again and again, even raping her sometimes. All she did was scream her name." The Hyuga of the branch family couldn't understand what his uncle was saying. It was really strange. "Hinata is such a bitch, following in her mother's footsteps. Namikaze. I hate that clan. I couldn't stand it when she screamed her name. Minato wasn't anything special, so why? I'm much better than that wretched 4th Hokage." Neji started laughing. If Naruto is even half of what his father was, and even if the 4th Hokage is only half of Naruto, then you're no match for him, and you never will be. Neji shifted from his guard stance. "I don't understand why myself, but there's something about him. It's a really strange and powerful effect, almost unhealthy, but we want to follow him, to walk by his side. And that's what I'm going to do. I'll follow Naruto to hell if I have to. Because he can help me achieve my goal, because mine is the same as his." The nephew raised his hands before surrounding them with chakra. "I want to show this clan that you're worthless. The Hyuga clan will disappear tonight. You'll never again possess this splendor that makes you so self-absorbed." Hiyashi sighed before bowing forward to lunge at his nephew. No matter the pain, he would defeat this wretched creature. Neji let his uncle advance before disappearing so that Hiyashi would crash like a sack of potatoes against the wall. He managed to stop a meter in front of the wall but couldn't counter the young man who came up behind him and delivered a powerful knee strike to the back of his head. The uncle was thrown against the wall, pressed between the barrier and the knee. The impact was so great that Hinata's father's blood splattered onto the wall. Letting himself fall nimbly, Neji set about finishing off his uncle. The 256 palms of the 8 trigrams. The series of blows was delivered differently from the original attack. In addition to striking 3 times as hard, he preferred using his palms to his fingertips before delivering a more forceful blow, violently pushing his uncle back. Since the uncle was against a wall, he easily understood the sensation of ping-pong balls. Each blow sent him crashing against the wall, bouncing him back before he was hit again, bouncing once more, and so on. After about 10 minutes, the uncle fell to the ground, weakened and exhausted after such a barrage. Neji raised 2 fingers, which he haloed with chakra, and struck Hisashi's brother's wrists. The uncle cried out in pain as he felt the chakra blade slice through his bones with ease. What did you do to me? I won't kill you, his brother's son informed him. But I've broken your wrists, I've destroyed the very essence of the gentle fist. Broken like this, they'll never be as strong as before, you'll never be able to use the gentle fist again. Placing 2 fingers on Hiyashi's temples, the young man concentrated chakra in his fingertips to sever 2 chakra channels as the young man screamed. Now, I've destroyed 2 of the main vision channels, you'll never be able to use the Byakugan again. In other words, Hiyashi, you're a Hyuga in name only. Neji delivered a powerful knee strike that sent his uncle's skull slamming against the wall, knocking him unconscious instantly. Calmly, the dark-haired man left the house to find a pile of corpses that served as Fu's seat. She was cleaning her weapon while humming a nursery rhyme that was completely inappropriate in such a situation, and wearing a childlike smile that was probably too joyful considering what she had just done. You've taken far too long, I think. Neji also noticed that she had repainted the floor and walls of the estate with the blood and brain matter of the clan members. Well, we can finally join the king because. She fell silent, gazing into the distance to see a strange light devour the inky veil covering the sky. It seems the king isn't the only one who's decided to plunge this world into hell. She turned to the dark-haired man. Hyuga, are you ready to hasten the end of another reign? I believe a clan is only good when it's decimated. When the Senju screamed in pain as the flames of Amaterasu consumed his face, the alarm was raised in the estate of Konoha's founding clan. Maeko and Hinata turned to their friend to observe the strange yet beautiful pupil that had just sprouted in the young woman's left eye. Not at all frightened, they quickly understood that the anger and fear Saya had felt when the Senju had aimed for her stomach had triggered a mutation in her eye. Clearly, barely formed, this little being was already working wonders. I didn't quite understand everything. Maeko placed her hand on her friend's shoulder. Congratulations, Saya, you're going to become even stronger. The brunette brought her hand to her left cheek, catching a drop of blood that trickled from her eye. But be careful, okay? The brunette nodded. Okay, we're here to talk to Yukimura. Maeko shouted, looking at the dozen or so Senju who had clustered in front of them. None of them answered, which only fueled Tsunade's only daughter's anger. Where is that jerk? The blonde shouted. She heard no answer, but Hinata gave her the answer. He's in the library. Look, there are almost twice as many of them on the path to the library, and when you mentioned him, they instinctively moved to reinforce the barrier. Maeko smiled as Saya watched Hinata. No doubt about it, the young Hyuga was very clever, her analytical skills never ceased to amaze her. What are we doing? Our goal isn't to cause trouble, but to see Yukimura and make him pay. However, we're never completely safe from a little accident. Saya smiled, her left eye shining with a demonic gleam. Maeko and Hinata smiled at the Uchiha's words. No matter how much they tried to deny it, Naruto had rubbed off on them. Team 8, we'll meet again at the library. Saya drew her sword and assumed a fighting stance before inhaling and exhaling slowly. With the baby, I can't use too much chakra, I'll have to stick to my taijutsu and kenjutsu. As for ninjutsu or nintaijutsu, I'll have to take it easy. She leaned forward and spun around. Shinko, Senryu. She made a circular cut, her blade vibrating and finally igniting, producing a trail of flame that followed the movement to form a fire whirl. The Senju leapt into the air but couldn't avoid the next blow. Shinko, Hiryu. Divine Path, Flying Dragon. Saya leapt, striking with her sword. The heat of the flames created an updraft, lifting the young woman into the sky and carrying her directly into the Senju domain. Hinata watched her friend disappear into the sky like a shooting star. A smile stretched across her lips as she lowered her gaze to meet a dozen Senju who seemed almost to be waiting for her. Maeko, I'll take the second round. See you later. The brunette entered a controlled imbalance and kicked forward to reach her opponents. She leaned forward to exhale softly. White Wolf Pass. In a subtle, swift, and sumptuous display of pivots and dodges, the brunette slipped between her opponents to reach the other side and continue on her way undisturbed by their opposition. She hurried to see another group approaching, and with a sigh, she dropped to the ground with a smile as her Byakugan activated. Black Wolf Pass. She dashed forward again, passing to the other side in the same way as before. With one difference. The White Wolf Pass was a passive technique allowing a member of the Hyuga clan to slip through a human barrier by weaving between bodies without touching them, thus remaining undetected. The Black Wolf Pass, on the other hand, involved weaving through the same barrier while simultaneously delivering powerful and precise gentle fist strikes designed to stun opponents. In higher doses, this could induce tetany or, in extreme cases, a heart attack. The brunette continued on her way, leaving the enemies to fall to the ground. Maeko smiled as she watched her best friends move ahead. She closed her eyes, surprised to realize she would have to fight those who claimed to be her family without treating her as such, alongside those who treated her as such despite having no blood relation whatsoever. Well, I can't leave my friends all alone. Maeko lifted 1 foot high into the sky, almost bringing her knee to her chest, which made more than one person whistle, clearly envious of such flexibility. Then, with a powerful axe kick, her heel exploded into the ground, sending mounds of earth flying before she brought her arm back to prepare a powerful strike. She closed her eyes and exhaled softly. Meteor Palm Strike. She launched her palm to strike the mounds of earth, which were propelled like bullets that exploded on the Senju, causing explosions of earth and dust. Then, the young woman leaned forward, skimming the ground while twisting her hips to create a real imbalance. She pushed harder with one leg to launch herself at her opponents while spinning and delivering multiple punches in all directions. Rapid strikes. The flurry of punches sent the Senju clan members flying through the air, scattering them across the street. Maeko straightened up and looked down at her fist. Okay, now's the perfect time to try it out. She cocked her arm and looked at the 4 people running towards her, a smile stretching across her lips as chakras swirled around her arm, generating lightning. Damn, the tension is incredible. She swung her arm forward and threw a punch. Thunderous strike, sky-shattering. The blow propelled her forward, striking one of her opponents as the lightning aura pounded those around her, simultaneously giving the young woman a powerful surge that sent her crashing through the walls of the houses in her path. When Saya's feet touched the ground, the brunette brought her blade down on her trapezius muscle. A smile crossed her lips as enemies piled up to confront her and halt her advance. Just 30 more meters and she would be able to reach the long-desired library and complete her quest. Well, it seems there are always more challenges. But you're far from scaring me, I've faced stronger than this. She lowered her blade, resting the tip on the ground, before smiling, amused. It's over. She delivered a powerful sword strike, swinging it back to gain momentum. Shinko, Enryu. She swooped down and dashed toward the enemy team. One of them slammed his sword into the ground, creating a wall of earth as the brunette slashed through the air. Shinko, Shoryu. She rose above the wall before pivoting in midair to cock her arm, placing her blade behind her neck to tense her muscles before planting 1 foot on the wall and launching herself at Senju's group, brandishing his blade in front of the group. Enryu. She struck the ground, unleashing a wave of fire that pushed the Senju too close. Using the blade as leverage, she performed a cartwheel and delivered an axe blow, striking the earth with even greater force. Shinko, Suryu. Divine Path, Earth Dragon. The earth cracked as spikes of soil erupted from the ground, before the young woman leapt back to survey her enemies on the ground. Saya moved quickly. The Senju clan numbered no more than 100 members. With the 20 they had defeated, there were probably 3 or 4 times that number left. They would have to be careful of the other opponents. For now, there wasn't much further to go, so it was probably dangerous for them. Maeko and Hinata are strong, they'll make it. Hinata landed on a house and watched the Senju run toward the entrance. There were 15 of them, so that brought the total to 25 Senju encountered. Out of 100, she was starting to find it a bit tiresome. She'd seen a quarter of the clan, which meant the other 2 had met just as many, so there had to be a quarter left free, potentially spread across the other fronts. But she couldn't let the Senju attack her friends, they hadn't spoken to Yukimura yet. With a leap, the brunette dropped onto the enemy group, cocking her arms behind her, palms outstretched. Twin Dragons Fall. The brunettes turned their heads, surprised to see Hinata plummet from the sky, lashing out with her palms in every direction. The series of quick, powerful, and precise blows deposited thin layers of chakra on their skin before they exploded in small detonations. They cried out before falling to the ground. Taking advantage of their momentum, Hinata bowed forward. Kaden. She began her rotation, pulling the brunettes into the current before sending them crashing against the nearby walls. They would be unconscious for at least an hour or 2. For now, she had only neutralized her opponents to clear the way. Neither Maeko, nor Saya, nor she herself were assassins. Turning her head, Hinata saw the Senju library and launched herself forward without hesitation. Maeko blew on her fist when she saw that there were about 15 opponents in front of her. With the last 15, she was approaching 30. Seriously, she was fed up with everyone getting in her way. Her only goal was to see her adoptive father and make him understand her point of view, so damn it. They should leave her alone. You're starting to annoy me. Maeko formed hand signs before slamming her fist into the ground. Wood release, woody prison. The earth cracked as the walls of the surrounding houses crumbled before some properties exploded with a terrible crash, immense roots bursting forth and lifting the layer of soil. The woody formations merged to form a massive tree, easily 20 meters tall and 5 meters wide. The tree branches shot out towards the brunettes, encircling the Senju clan members and lifting them until they were pressed against the bark. They could feel their limbs sinking into the tree as their chakras were drained from the vegetation. The blonde woman sighed wearily as a flower emerged from the ground. She picked the flower with its sky-blue petals and nibbled at the plant as the bluish color slowly faded to a dull hue. At the same time, the beads of sweat on the young woman's forehead slowly disappeared. All right, Yukimura, it's your turn. Hinata, Saya, and Maeko stood before the door of the Senju Library, one of the largest institutions in the region and the second largest library in Konoha. They easily pushed open the door and found themselves face to face with the Senju clan leader, Yukimura. The dark-haired man sighed, turning his head toward the young women. I see that when you shake the branches a little, you get fruit. But I expected a reaction from the tree, he sighed. Tell me, Maeko, aren't you important enough for Naruto to come? I can't see myself taking care of the three of you. I'd be terribly dissatisfied in the end. He stood facing her. Well, before we start fighting, although the outcome is certain, why don't we clarify your situation a little, Maeko? What do you want to know? What's this? Come on, don't you want to know things? Don't you have any questions about the 12 years you spent in my home under my protection? Why didn't your mother tell you anything? Tsunade, Saya, and Maeko were all in the living room of the Uzumaki residence. Tsunade looked at her daughter before swallowing softly. Maeko, since when? The young woman lowered her eyes before whispering. The night before last, I came home and overheard a conversation between you and Naruto. Tsunade sighed. She was surprised that Naruto would say such a thing, but well, she should have expected him to pull a stunt like that. This morning he told me, the blonde, the first of her name, was astonished. He had spoken with Maeko this morning, yet he had gone for a walk before she left her room. The mother's hand tightened as she suppressed the urge to kill her godson, and I had to tell you about it. That I knew nothing about my birth and what caused us to be separated. I didn't tell Naruto anything, the blonde informed, surprising the two Chunin. He doesn't know anything, so I don't see why he told you, but I don't know much either. I know that when my master approached me with an inert body, consumed by flames, I couldn't look any longer, blonde hair and fair skin, though burned. My brain must have played tricks on me, since I was convinced it was you, Tsunade confessed. Dan, your father wanted to name you Maeko, but he died long before you were born, so that name stuck with you, the Sanin added. What's rather strange is that I lived hoping to atone for the sin of abandoning you to protect the village, this same village that is bland and empty. I wanted to make amends to earn my place by your side. Then that little jerk, manipulative and unhealthy, came into my life and brought me back to you. For that, I will be eternally grateful to him. The young woman smiled at her mother's words. Since I saw you again, I'm so afraid of scaring you away and losing you again. Maeko silenced her by jumping over the sofa and hugging her mother. Never, Mom. I will never run away from you, I will never let you go far from me. I will never abandon you. Tsunade smiled, hugging the young woman. Why? I was just following orders, Yukimura smiled. After all, I'm just a shinobi obeying the Hokage's orders. Chapter 43, The Shadow Rises. Lemon. A hoarse breath escaped her lips as her body arched. Placing her hands on his shoulders at her sides, she stood up with a soft cry. Her long, shimmering, fiery hair swayed as her hips performed a sensual, gentle dance, her bare buttocks glistening with perspiration. The woman with the fiery mane cried out before biting her full lips, revealing sharp canines. Her ample breasts were supported by a pair of strong hands that gripped her mounds firmly yet gently. The young woman flicked out her tongue to lick her upper lip and leaned down to kiss the person beneath her passionately. She tensed, pulling the young man tightly against her. I'm not sure if this is it, chakra shooting. I assure you, the orange-haired boy replied, straightening up with an amused smile. If you want to gain my power, you'll have to make amends for everything you've done and haven't paid for. The redhead sighed. We said it would be fair, didn't we? That I'd get twice as much as you make from your little human companions outside. Since you haven't done anything for me all this time, I want you to make amends, my little Naruto. Kurama, time is of the essence, and I have things to do. I don't care, the demon shouted. Let them die, it doesn't concern me at all. My life won't change if they die, they choose their own future, don't they? She raised Naruto's hand and intertwined her fingers with his. There was a time when you and I were enough for each other. A time when you saw no one but me. You've changed, Naruto. You've grown attached to them. He opened his mouth. Don't deny it, Naruto, I'm in your head. You don't understand yet, but you're not just interested in them. Your mother felt the same way about your father. Naruto, you might not admit it, but you. Stop it, Kurama, Naruto sighed, pulling her towards him for a deep kiss. She squealed with pleasure as she hugged him. He flipped her onto his back and thrust his hips into her. She arched her back, letting out a long moan of pleasure as he lowered himself to suckle one of her breasts. Stop thinking, he growled, cupping one of her buttocks in his hand and pressing it against him, deepening the penetration. She then wrapped her arms around the clan leader, closing the distance between them and intensifying the feeling of oneness. A moan of pleasure escaped her lips as her legs wrapped around his waist, lifting her completely off the ground, supported by Uzumaki's hand. Her hair trailed on the floor, disturbed by the thrusts of her lover and host. Without you, I would never have made it this far. Without you, I would be dead. Kurama, you were my first support, my first friend, and you are the closest thing to what I consider family. Kurama, I could never abandon you. A smile stretched across the demon's lips as the young Uzumaki's thrusts made her jump, her breasts swaying back and forth as the redhead shifted to sit, leaving the orange-haired girl on his thighs to continue his pounding motions, making her bounce along his erect member, comfortably nestled in her wet depths. Finally, they both climaxed together with a groan and a cry muffled by a powerful kiss between the two lovers. End of Lemon. I won't leave you either, Naruto, the demon breathed softly, resting her head on her Jinchūriki's shoulder. A hand grabbed the demon's hair, pulling her away from her lover. The redhead watched, dumbfounded, as the orange-haired girl slid to the ground. She too raised her head before letting out a sigh. I should have known. Maeko, Saya, and Hinata were facing Yukimura. The dark-haired man had a slight smile as he looked at the dejected expression of the one who had, for a time, been his daughter. He had just told her that she had lost all trace of her mother, because the Hokage had asked him to, at least in a way. That night was etched in her memory, which was normal in a sense, but he had other reasons for it. Yukimura gritted his teeth, looking at his arm, broken in several places. No matter the damage, it would be healed soon anyway. A groan escaped his lips as he returned to the village to find Era, who had valiantly fought Kyuubi. Where's Harama? The brunette smiled at her husband, relieved to see him, before she reassured him in turn. Harama is fine, he's home, she replied, lowering her eyes and frowning. How did you do this to yourself? The brunette brushed the question aside as someone approached him. Hokage-sama, the brunette exclaimed, surprised. The leader of Konoha was holding a child in his arms. She wasn't even a month old, but she already had small tufts of blonde hair. I'd like to ask for your help. They both nodded. This little girl lost her parents in the attack. Her mother is a senju, so I thought she could be placed in your care so you could look after her. Era scooped the child into her arms before frowning. Is that Maeko? The brunette asked, startling the Hokage. He hadn't imagined the young woman could remember a child she'd only seen once. Yet, I saw Tsunade. She must. Tsunade must never know that Maeko is with you. For now, and for everyone's sake, Tsunade's daughter died in the Nine-Tails attack, and you've taken in an orphan. Understand. Era turned her head toward her husband, who nodded gently. He didn't care who the child came from, but perhaps he could use the infant to bring glory to the Senju clan. Yukimura sighed before looking up at the blonde, who had taken a fighting stance. A quick movement was all it took for the young woman to reach her enemy's level and unleash a spinning kick. The chief ducked to avoid the heel strike that hit a stone column before the adult retreated to avoid the follow-up axe kick. He sighed as he leapt into the air to avoid the circular sword stroke that sliced through both wall and table. Is this all Uchiha Kenjutsu can do? Saya gritted her teeth before cocking her arm back to better position it. Shinko, Senryu. She delivered a circular sword slash. The brunette jumped just above the blade and dodged the trail of flame that spread through the air, engulfing trees and walls. The brunette gritted her teeth before completing her full rotation and leapt into the air to strike. Shinko, Shoryu. She delivered an upward strike and rose in her opponent's wake to deliver a powerful blow. He lifted his foot to place his heel on the guard and performed a backflip to clear it, landing nimbly before cocking his arm back as lightning encircled it. Saya flinched. Given the angle of the strike, the blow would hit her squarely in the stomach. Thunderous clash, upsetting the sky. He struck, his lightning-wreathed fist meeting a chakra-charged palm. Dragon dance. Hinata exclaimed as her chakra exploded onto the brunette's skin. The lightning was negated by the difference in ratio between the chakra emitted and the chakra received. The two blows were thus separated by their physical force, which explained why Hinata was thrown backward like a rag doll. However, during this time, Saya had time to fall back to earth. Shinko, Celestial Dragon, Divine Path, Heavenly Dragon. Yukimura jumped, quickly shifting to the side to avoid the strike. When the blade made contact with the ground, it created a 3-meter-long slash and a powerful blast. The flames on either side were caught by the air current and completely ignited the air blade, which crashed down onto the Senju clan's structures, starting a fire. But no matter, his opponents weren't going to stop for so little. Yukimura was only making them angry because he didn't want to talk to them, yet seemed eager to fight them. Well, I didn't realize you were at such a high level. I really should have paid attention to you, Maeko. The blonde gritted her teeth as she lunged forward, unleashing a flurry of punches and kicks that Yukimura dodged or parried with simple hand movements, redirecting the strikes out of his danger zone to maintain his advantage while simultaneously opening Maiko's guard. You're really too slow, Maeko. See what real speed is. He delivered 2 swipes, opening the blonde's guard to fully expose her midriff, then lowered his hand before delivering a smooth, easy strike to the young woman's stomach. Bursting flames strike. Maeko cried out in pain as she was thrown against a wall on the other side of the library. Saya and Hinata turned their heads toward their friends. Yukimura's power was truly immense. He must be stronger than Obito or Hiashi. They had never seen Maeko brought down with a single blow. A gust of wind caught Saya's eye. She turned to see a heel approaching her cheek. Earth Storm Kick. The strike was powerful and swift, sending the young woman sprawling sideways, past Hinata, who noticed too late that Yukimura had just arrived in front of her, fist raised. Earth-lifting thunder strike. The Hyuga ducked just in time to see the fist strike her chin, launching her into the air. She slammed violently into the ceiling before falling back down. The dark-haired man pulled his arm back to focus his attack. Thunderclap shaking the sky. He struck, but once again, he couldn't dodge the blow. The Dance of the Twin Dragons. A flurry of blows hit him squarely in the back, sending him flying through the air before the chakra mines exploded on his back. Hinata fell directly into her cousin's arms. Neji sighed, looking up to see his opponent get back up as if nothing had happened. His techniques are truly on another level compared to Maiko's, they're closer to Naruto's or Tsunade's. But he can already get back up. Either he has insane chakra control, or he possesses accelerated regeneration. The dark-haired man set his cousin down before turning his head toward his opponent, who seemed to be waiting. Behind him, the clan's books were burning, devouring the walls to reach the ceiling. Neji turned his head to see Fu. She had a huge smile on her face before stepping forward to pass the dark-haired man. Get out, girls, I want to test his skill. Neji looked at the 3 young women before approaching Hinata. Get Saya out first. Shumei warns me that the harmful fumes are bad for them. The Hyuga looked surprised before quickly grabbing Saya and pulling her out. He activated his dojutsu and saw that chakra seemed to be concentrating around her uterus, forming something. So she was pregnant. Well, I hope you're more skilled than those in the Hyuga clan. Or than the scumbags who tried to stop me before I got here. The dark-haired man raised an eyebrow, looking at the green-haired woman's blood-covered weapon. You've killed a lot of people. Humans don't matter, the green-haired woman stated, raising her staff. Will you make me forget the bitter taste this pure and simple waste of time has left in my mouth? A groan escaped the clan leader's lips. He bowed forward and vanished, arriving beside the green-haired woman before she even had time to move. His heel grazed his temple before Fu deflected it. Using the tip of her weapon, she struck the brown-haired man's ankle, sending his foot flying over his head and throwing him off balance. She retaliated by pivoting on her feet and preparing her weapon for a powerful bat-like blow, striking Yukimura squarely in the stomach. He spat out bile before being sent flying. Before he reached the wall, he saw that Fu had already arrived, staff raised above his head, before she delivered a powerful axe blow. The staff lodged itself in the clan leader's ribcage, sending him crashing to the ground. Weakened by the flames, the dark-haired man easily passed through the floor and landed in the basement where the storeroom was located. Ashes followed, smothering the paper lying there. Yukimura straightened up and looked around before sighing. You think you can get me like that? He formed a series of hand seals. Earth release, pressure cube. The earth began to tremble as Fu raised an eyebrow. She looked around, uncomprehending, before seeing the walls explode, releasing earthen walls 30 meters high and 50 meters wide, which crushed her like a mere piece of wood. She sighed before looking at her enemy. You block the earthly pathways. So what? Two membranous wings emerged from beneath her skirt, making the dark-haired man jump. I am a Jinchūriki, my power is greater than yours. She leapt into the air, soaring above the walls while forming a series of hand seals. But you've given me the perfect terrain. The young woman smiled, taking in the square arena-like space beneath her. After another series of seals, she exhaled sharply. Fire release, infernal blaze. She unleashed a wave of flames that made Saya's own flames seem like mere lighters. The wave crashed into the square and spread like a sea of fire, consuming everything in its path as if nothing could stand in its way. Water release, ocean dragons. A dozen water dragons, 2 to 3 times larger than a normal water dragon, burst from the ground, leaping over the walls and crashing into the flames, calming the inferno that had just erupted within the earthen prison. Fu raised an eyebrow, not understanding what had just happened, and looked down to see about 30 Anbu and the Hokage in position. A little further away stood Neji with the trio of kunoichi. Easily realizing that the situation was not turning in her favor, the green-haired girl dropped back to the ground to rejoin her team. What's going on here? Hiruzen asked. Just a friendly chat, Maeko informed him. Yukimura has things to tell me, and so do you. The blonde snarled, pointing at the fire shadow. He raised an eyebrow before sneering. Come now, Senju-chan, I have nothing to do with this. I know it's your fault I never knew my mother. I know it's because you lied to her that she left. Tsunade is a Sanin, she's a kunoichi who swore allegiance to this village. So I have the right to use her as I see fit, Hiruzen stated, his voice as calm as ever. He had no qualms about using Tsunade and Maeko by manipulating their emotions. Tsunade is a very powerful kunoichi, unfortunately, I needed her away from Naruto so I could make him into what I needed. Whether you lost your mother or she lost her daughter, it's a small price to pay. Maeko gritted her teeth at the fire shadow's words. This applies perfectly to all three of you. I'm still the one who decides for my ninjas. If you get in my way in any way whatsoever, I'll have to deal with you. The three kunoichi's eyes widened, surprised to hear the Hokage's justification and threat. But I see it all worked out. Even though I'd imagined the opposite. I calculated that at least one of you would fall in love with Naruto, that he would feel the same way about at least one of you, and that with these feelings, he would use his hard-earned powers to defend his partner and, by extension, Konoha. He sighed deeply as the young women looked at each other. So, everything they felt for Naruto was just an illusion created by the Hokage. No, Saya breathed, gently placing her hand on her lower abdomen, where she could feel the chakra slowly gathering. This is not an illusion, nothing is born from illusions. I love Naruto and that has nothing to do with you. Yes, I suspected as much, Hiruzen sighed. Normally, you were supposed to bring him over to our cause, not join his. He groaned wearily. I don't know his goal yet, but I know one thing. You won't be part of it. Hiruzen vanished, only to appear behind the trio. He raised a hand before launching a sweeping attack. It was met with a heel strike from Maeko. She had kicked back in self-defense, and she was right to do so. The blow sent the shadow flying back about 10 meters, but didn't knock him down. As soon as his foot touched the ground, he formed a series of hand seals. Earth release, tectonic upheaval. The earth fractured before Hiruzen's side lifted, and he followed with another series of hand seals. Earth release, mudslide. The earth became damp before melting like a wave over the trio. Hiruzen repeated a series of hand seals before inhaling. Fire release, fire dragon's breath, the Hokage exclaimed, spitting out a jet of fire that mingled with the mudslide. The three jumped before reacting swiftly. Water release, tidal wave, Maeko cried, spitting out a powerful jet of water that rose like a wall of water. Saya and Hinata formed a similar series of hand seals before exhaling together. Futon, jet stream. The air exploded centimeters from their mouths, creating a powerful tornado with currents as fast as they were dangerous. The column of air mingled with the water to continue its path. The water in the whirlpool became even clearer, as if it were turning into ice. Which couldn't be more true, since the combined power of the kunoichi of Team 8 managed to extinguish the attack while freezing a layer of mud. Hiruzen charged at his opponents, if you could call them that, before unleashing a powerful kick that was blocked by a punch from Maeko. Hinata followed up with a powerful technique from her clan, one that had proven itself time and again. The 8 trigrams 64 palms, which struck the Hokage head-on. He was thrown backward, but recovered easily before disappearing once more. Neji and Hinata were the first to be surprised by the attack's lack of effect. They were also the first to be hit by the Hokage. He came up behind them before sending them flying with a powerful kick. Saya arrived behind the Hokage, sword drawn. Shinko, Enryu. She struck, but the shadow pivoted sideways, letting the weapon pass by, and, continuing its rotation, slammed the back of its hand into the young woman's chin. She was thrown to the ground with a groan. Maeko leapt into the air, cocking her arm and concentrating her chakra around her fist. She placed one foot on a wall and vanished, arriving at Hiruzen's level. Earth-shattering thunderbolt. His fist pierced the Hokage as if he didn't exist. His fist shattered the earth, as the attack's description stated, but more importantly, it left the Senju completely defenseless. The opponent armed his foot and struck with force, burying it in the blonde's stomach and launching her into the air. Once it reached her face, Hiruzen armed his arm and struck as she descended. Plunging his fist into the young man's stomach again, she cried out in pain before being thrown into the street. She rolled on the ground, coughing violently, then struggled to her feet to resume the attack. Saya stood up, took up her katana, and looked at Fu. The green-haired girl was struggling with the Anbu and seemed to be having difficulty fighting Konoha's elite. However, as if answering a summons, the Jinchūriki struck an Anbu, seizing his sword and hurling it at the Uchiha. Saya lunged to grab the other sword, spinning them together and crossing them, placing the blades perpendicular to the ground. The blade in her right hand was positioned to her left, and the blade in her left hand to her right. She closed her eyes, recalling the sensation she had felt when she used black fire. Akko, near you, demonic way, double dragon. Her blades glowed before igniting, as with other techniques, before the flames began to blacken, much to the Hokage's astonishment. Since when could Saya use this power? She lunged forward, crossing the distance between the two enemies, and uncrossed her arms, delivering a double cross-shaped slash. Hiruzen cried out as the gash tore through his flesh, instantly bursting into flames. The body fell to the ground with a strange, hollow sound. The others rushed to Saya's side to protect her and assess the fighter's condition. He had clearly switched places with a simple log. However, the three young women and Neji had lost sight of the Hokage. Hinata sensed a presence behind her and quickly turned to see that Neji had just blocked one of Hiruzen's attacks. The trio faced the cage. Maeko wound her arm before striking, but the monkey let the blow hit his stomach and was launched into the air, forming hand seals. Hinata frowned. Maiko's attacks have no effect on him. I doubt he has Maiko's or Naruto's accelerated regeneration. Could he be wearing armor? He pivoted to land on the ground and took a deep breath to prepare his technique. Fire release, Dragon's Inferno. He spat out a trail of flame, a thin thread of fire that, once it reached a distance of 2 meters from its master, swelled and exploded into a wall of flame over 8 meters wide and a good 4 meters high. The Konoha ninjas' eyes widened when they saw the immense display of power from the shadow of fire. The heat and light completely petrified the quartet, even though Fu had been fighting the same opponents for some time. The earth cracked around the Konoha ninjas before piles of wood erupted from the ground, forming a thick, fireproof barrier. With no undergrowth, the fire didn't catch and perfectly protected the team. Maeko? Hinata asked, surprised, as the blonde looked around, also astonished to see such a thing, despite not having even moved or tried to do anything, so paralyzed was she by fear. I had nothing to do with it. The Senju breathed softly, a smile playing on her lips. That means that. Hiruzen turned his head to see his Anbu burning in black flames, the luckier ones at least. The others were impaled on a long sword of reddish chakra. Obviously, the Hokage was surprised to see such a manifestation of chakra forming a humanoid body. I never thought I'd see this one day. A little earlier, Obito had groaned as he walked along the dirt path. Before him stood the gates of Konoha and 2 Anbu. What were they doing there? Anyway, he had just finished a rather short mission and all he wanted was to sleep in his wife's arms, ignoring the fact that she was menstruating and in a terrible mood. Add to that Saya's pregnancy, and he had everything going for him to have a disastrous night. Damn it, why are the Anbu guarding the door? What's going on? Asked the Uchiha clan leader. The Hyuga and Senju clans have been attacked, one of the Anbu informed him. Obito was surprised, but not displeased. He didn't support either clan, but he especially hoped that Maeko and Hinata hadn't been affected by all this. How are Maeko Senju and Hinata Hyuga? Who are the attackers? The Uchiha questioned, eager to learn more. According to our sources, Neji Hyuga, Hinata Hyuga, Maeko Senju, Saya Uchiha, and a civilian, Fu. Obito fell silent, surprised. It was impossible, they would never do anything so stupid, and had something happened, where was Naruto? Don't worry, the Hokage is already taking care of quelling the rebellion. We have orders to intercept Naruto Uzumaki when he returns. This was all getting increasingly bizarre. What exactly was happening in the village? Obito pinched the bridge of his nose before speaking. I'd like to speak with Saya. It's best to let the Hokage handle it, the Anbu indicated. He looked up to see movement behind Obito. Wait, Uchiha-san. He stepped past the dark-haired man and approached the newcomer. Who are you? The question was unfortunately cut short by a cry of pain from the same Anbu as black fire engulfed his face and torso. The other Anbu was suddenly startled before running towards his teammate, but he didn't see the wood dragon that burst from the forest bordering the field and devoured him without leaving a trace. Obito observed the newcomer before sighing and rubbing the back of his neck. I knew this whole thing stank, so you decided to do something about it. The person stopped in front of Konoha's gates and sighed. He closed his eyes, weighing the pros and cons, before opening them again, resolute. I took care of Saya. Well, I have to admit I messed up the ending a bit. The newcomer looked surprised, turning his head toward Obito. Saya is pregnant. A very long silence followed the statement before laughter rippled through the area. The two turned their heads toward the third arrival. He was leaning against a tree and smiling at the stranger. So, aren't you happy? You're going to be an uncle, Itachi. The Uchiha gave a thin smile before straightening up. His Akatsuki uniform had been swapped for an outfit similar to his brother's. A black jacket with a high collar and long, loose sleeves, emblazoned with the Uchiha symbol, and baggy pants tucked into black boots. Let's go, Kurama. You must be eager to see your sister again. The brown-clad man smiled. He straightened up and put his jacket back on. His brown jacket was half-buttoned, revealing a mesh t-shirt underneath. He also wore dark brown pants. Just by looking at their outfits, it was easy to see that the two adults had left the Red Moon organization. I'll come with you. No, uncle. You've already suffered and done far too much with the massacre of the clan. I'm here to atone for my sins and bring justice to my clan, the young man informed him. Obito opened his mouth. I don't want to separate you from Rin. The uncle sighed, rubbing the back of his neck. Very well. In that case, go ahead. I'll go home to establish an alibi. They both nodded and disappeared in a second. Good luck. Itachi activated his Susanoo to help Fu and easily defeat the Anbu, while Harama summoned a wooden dome to protect his sister and friends. I never thought I'd see this, the Hokage sighed, crossing his arms. Itachi Uchiha and Harama Senju had returned to Konoha. Saya and Maeko were surprised, but incredibly happy to see their elders again. Itachi approached his sister and bowed to look at her face. The young woman smiled gently at her brother's expression, completely forgetting everything he had done before. Harama, meanwhile, approached his own sister to comfort her and embrace her. She quickly returned the hug. What a beautiful reunion. Will we finally see the Uchiha settle their score? Saya, don't forget that it was Itachi who destroyed your family. Yes, Itachi confessed, bringing Saya back to reality. And it must also be remembered that this was the mission order given by the Hokage and the Konoha Council. The declaration was a shock to the Konoha ninja. We have no other choice, Hiruzen, Danzo declared. He was sitting next to Homura, while Hiruzen was flanked by Homura and Kaharu. Facing them was Itachi Uchiha, a young 13-year-old Anbu. The Uchiha clan is preparing a rebellion, no, a coup. The root leader emphasized. Let's stop deluding ourselves. The fan clan doesn't. That's enough, Danzo, the Hokage sighed. Ending the end of an entire clan is no easy task. It's easy to pass off a few people as accidents, but wiping out an entire clan is far too difficult and requires more precautions and a scapegoat, Hiruzen stated, interlacing his fingers on the table. Furthermore, the Uchiha are valiant fighters, sending an Anbu team would be quickly noticed, and we would only provoke their wrath and trigger the civil war we want to avoid. Besides, if the village learns that the clan was killed by the council, then we would only increase the number of potential enemies, the Fire Shadow explained simply. No, what we need is someone capable of killing the clan single-handedly and strong enough to leave the village without being captured by the enemy. A sigh escaped his lips. Thank you for the information, Itachi. However, there's one last mission you'll have to undertake. The dark-haired man nodded silently. Your skill level and your clan affiliation place you at the very top of this list of potential candidates. So, if you don't mind, I would ask you to put an end to this matter. Itachi frowned. Are you asking me to wipe out my own family? Hiruzen closed his eyes. I realize this request is unusual and disconcerting, but you're the only one who can make it. In exchange, I grant you the right to ask for whatever you desire. You can include any clause you wish. I accept. I will protect Konoha by eliminating the members of my clan. But I want my brother and sister to be exempted and entrusted to Obito Uchiha, my uncle, who no longer has any connection to this clan. Hiruzen readily agreed. Itachi turned and left without another word. Naturally, he remained behind the door to listen to the pronouncements of the four members of Konoha's ruling power. Do you think he'll do it? Kaharu asked. Probably, but not in its entirety, Hiruzen informed him. Danzo, I'll overlook it this time, but send one or two root Anbu anyway. You can never be too careful. Itachi sighed and disappeared. It was going to be a long night, and he needed to confide in someone. Actually, he needed to confide in two people. Itachi was seated at the table, Obito was pouring tea, while Kurama, sporting a completely black mane, was sweetening his own. The Uchiha had recounted the meeting with the council and still seemed reeling from the directive. Your mission isn't exactly simple, his best friend and rival informed him. Would you like me to help you? The Uchiha sighed before looking up at the Senju and gently agreeing. Anyway, I don't plan on staying here too long. The only thing that bothers me is not being able to help Naruto. These damn roots are a pain. Minato-sensei and Kushina weren't stupid, they must have known something was up, otherwise, you would never have had this guardian roll over Naruto, Obito stated. Itachi looked up at his uncle. Naruto can handle himself now, he's changed a lot, and few people dare cross him. After this last mission, I'll be joining the Akatsuki. I heard about this organization from Jiraiya-sama. According to him, they're after the Jinchūriki. So Naruto would be in danger. Obito frowned before sighing. By the way, uncle. I need your help with something. The dark-haired man nodded. Kurama and I are forced to fight as if we know nothing. But Danzo is going to send Anbu from his team. Can you handle them? Obito agreed. Itachi finished his drink before clenching his teeth. Well, time to ruin my life. Saya, Maeko, Hinata, and Neji were stunned by such remarks. Hiruzen sighed. Now he understood Sasuke and Saya's survival. Even though Danzo had declared there would be no survivors, the root Anbu were dead fighting Obito. Perhaps he should have known better, actually. But still, nothing changed the fact that Itachi and Kurama were two thorns in his side, and he'd like to get rid of them as quickly as possible. Well, I don't think you're here to talk. No, but we won't fight you. We have a few more questions. Did you attack my clan before I did? Absolutely not, I didn't want to risk the lives of my Anbu, Hiruzen stated. But, judging by your question, you're making me understand that either there were enemies missing, or there were already deaths. That reminds me, we found your mother's corpse, but it wasn't made with the same weapon as the others. Who killed her? He saw Itachi frown. I conclude, therefore, that it wasn't you. Hiruzen smiled weakly. Itachi seemed preoccupied with thought, so he might as well take advantage of it. He followed up by throwing 5 kunai, then formed a series of hand seals. Shuriken Kage Bunshin. The 5 kunai became 50 and flew towards the Uchiha. Kurama raised his hands, revealing 2 seals in his palms. His right hand was marked with the earth symbol, while his left bore the water seal. He clapped his hands together as the earth exploded before them, creating a thick wooden wall that deflected the opposing blades. Hiruzen had observed the technique and found it truly strange. You're not a Senju who uses wood release, how do you do it? The brown-haired boy smiled. I'm a Senju descended from the first Hokage. I've acquired the same mastery of earth release and water release as the second Hokage did in water release. Thanks to that, and with the help of my aunt Kushina, I've discovered a new facet of my abilities. It's not easy to get rid of me. Hiruzen didn't understand anything. Kurama wasn't supposed to be a wood release heir. Yukimura had never had the slightest predisposition to that element, normally it was genetic. Maeko had received the predisposition from Tsunade, but did that mean he had it from the start? Had he forced the appearance of wood release in his genes, or was it related to the seals tattooed on his palms? In any case, the technique was highly commendable. But one thing was troubling, neither of them seemed stressed as they faced the Hokage. Why? Itachi and Kurama were both elite Anbu, S-rank criminals, but even together, they couldn't defeat him. Few people could fight the professor and third Hokage of Konoha. His own students couldn't yet. Aren't you afraid to fight me? Asked the fire shadow. Itachi shook his head slightly. No, since we won't fight you, the Uchiha stated. He will. Hiruzen turned to see 3 people approaching slowly. The person in the center seemed surrounded by an aura as overwhelming as it was malevolent, almost perceptible to the naked eye. Do you see that? I don't know how long I've been waiting for all this. The trio stopped as Hiruzen fixed his onyx gaze on his opponent's blood-red eyes. You seem fired up. Are you finally going to show me the results of so many years of preparation, Naruto? Chapter 44, Reaping What Scattered. I won't let you go either, Naruto, the demon breathed softly, resting her head on her Jinchūriki's shoulder. A hand grabbed the demon's hair, snatching her away from her lover. The redhead watched, dumbfounded, as the orange-haired girl slid to the ground. She too raised her head before letting out a sigh. I should have known. Naruto's gaze shifted between Kurama, now clad in an orange kimono made of chakra, and the new person who had just burst into his mind. Yes, there was no other word for it. It was a woman, a stunning woman, in fact. She had long, cascading red hair, violet-gray eyes, and olive skin. She wore a green dress with thick straps over an off-white sleeveless shirt with a high, zippered collar. She was tall, but slightly shorter than Uzumaki. Though bewildered, Naruto focused his chakra around himself to dress. After all, he was inside her mind, he could do what he wanted. The redhead turned her head before landing a right hook to the young man's jaw, sending him flying. "You're crazy, sleeping with Kurama," the beautiful young woman yelled as Naruto soared through the air before landing at the feet of another newcomer. "Damn it, my mind isn't a squat." Naruto looked up as he stood, only to find himself facing a man. Long, shaggy blonde hair, fair skin, and azure eyes. He wore a Jonin jacket over a blue ninja outfit. His ensemble was further covered by something else that made a much stronger impression. A long, white, short-sleeved haori, edged with red flames and emblazoned with Yondaime Hokage along the spine. Naruto froze, staring at the gentle face of the fourth Hokage. The blonde lowered his hand to the redhead's face, gently stroking the thick whiskers etched into his skin. "No, it's not possible." "Well, you don't even recognize his father." Minato grinned broadly as his son quickly stepped back, bumping into something. Judging by the sweet, unfamiliar, fruity scent, he knew it was his mother, and he was about to experience that again. Two arms slipped under his armpits and settled on his chest, pulling him closer. "Naruto," a soft voice whispered. The young man clenched his fists, turning to see Kushina facing him as Minato approached the demon. The redhead turned her head toward Kurama. "So, you vicious fox, since when do you think you have the right to touch my son?" "He's more my son than yours," the orange-haired man commented, rising to face his former host. "It's thanks to me that your son is still alive, Kushina. So stop acting so superior and keep your head down." Chains erupted from the ground, wrapping around the fox's arms and legs before one passed between her breasts to encircle her neck and subdue her. "Damn, these damn chains again," the Biju growled, trying to break free from its previous Jinchūriki's grasp. "And I don't like it when you talk to me like that, Kyubi-chan," Kushina snarled. "I haven't forgiven you for the times you raped poor Mina-kun, and I'm not going to let you sleep with my son. Do you want me to remind you what you tried to do right after he was born?" The redhead placed her hand on her stomach. "I might not look it, but I still feel like." "Stop it," Naruto interrupted with a sweeping gesture, summoning his Susanoo to sever the chains. Kushina and Minato frowned as the humanoid chakra arm vanished into thin air. He held out his hand, helping the fox girl to her feet. "My relationship with Kurama might be strange, but it suits me. You can't understand what I've been through, and I have no desire to feel sorry for myself." The parents looked at each other before sighing. "Well, now, explain to me what you're doing in my mind. I understand this situation is a little confusing for you, and I think that's normal." "No," Naruto exaggeratedly breathed. "Not at all," the redhead retorted sarcastically. "After all, it's happened to everyone, I think, to meet their parents in their minds about 16 years after they ruined their offspring's lives by condemning them to a lonely and painful existence." Naruto chuckled mockingly. "Why would I be confused?" Kushina clenched her fists as Minato took the lead. "I know that in 16 years, you must have gone through a lot. You resent us, and I can't say anything against that, since you have every right to. It's true that we didn't act like model parents, that we gave you a lot to do, and that it was perhaps a bit too much for you. But we were certain that sooner or later, you would manage to rise up and defy these chains that restrict you as a ninja and as a Jinchūriki. We were convinced that you would manage to forge your own path, becoming stronger each time. You wanted me to become a weapon. Like Hiruzen." "No," Kushina shouted. "We would have much preferred to stay by your side, to live with you. Both Minato and I desperately wanted to stay by your side. But we didn't have a choice. To protect you, we had to make a choice. Faced with two evils, we chose the lesser. You were meant to live and succeed where we failed." "Where you failed?" Naruto asked, surprised. "What do you mean?" "You see, Naruto, we've had quite a turbulent life because of our clans and our forbidden love. Our wish was to unite everyone, to show that something good could come from this union. You certainly weren't planned for so soon, but you came into the world." Kushina smiled, taking her child's hand, which he couldn't bring himself to pull away from. "You embody both of our ideologies, Naruto. You show that order can be established in chaos." "Establish order from chaos," Naruto repeated. "That's not my goal at all." "I'm not so sure about that, Naruto." Minato smiled. "Well, it seems we have a little time. How about we talk?" The Uzumaki family settled onto the floor as Kurama leaned back against his current host, resting and offering support. "So, Naruto, what do you want to talk about? You must have some questions, right?" Minato asked. The Uzumaki placed a hand on his chin before nodding in agreement. For as long as I can remember, I've always wanted to know my parents and learn as much as possible about them. Now that I see you here, facing me and side by side, I'd like to know. What's your story? How did you meet? There are so many things I'd like to understand. Kushina took the young man's hand and smiled kindly at him. We'll answer anything you want, the redhead smiled. So, you want to hear our story? She added shyly, blushing at the obviously awkward question her son was asking. Minato chuckled at his partner's reaction, which earned him a solid right hook, as well as a surprised look from his son. Kushina really did have a strange personality. She had shy moments, but also quite violent ones. When he watched her, he remembered Yuya, Saya, and Maeko, who had relatively similar personalities. Okay, so let's start from the beginning. Flashback. In a classroom, there were about 30 children. They were all staring at a young woman in her 20s with long blonde hair. She was explaining a lesson to the class and checked the time. Good, the Hokage shouldn't be long, the teacher informed them. We're going to take a break for now, so please be quiet while I go get this afternoon's questionnaire. She glanced around the classroom before settling on a rather frail and slender-looking boy. He had a thick mop of blonde hair, azure eyes, and fair skin. He was wearing a white t-shirt over a long-sleeved black top and black pants. Minato, can you keep an eye on the class? Kushina. Minato sighed. Frail and slender-looking. What? You really didn't look very manly, you know. Besides, you were 8 years old, you looked like a girl, Mina-kun, the redhead informed him. Of course. The blonde quickly slipped away, leaving the students to move around the classroom and chat amongst themselves. The little blonde boy stayed in his seat to continue his drawing and soon found himself sitting next to a brunette with dark eyes and fair skin. She wore a short, dark dress emblazoned with the Uchiha symbol, over black pants. The blonde boy turned his head, standing just inches from his neighbor's face. She blushed as he smiled kindly at her. What's wrong, Makoto? Are you sick? No, the girl smiled, looking at the drawing. What is it? Something I saw in one of my uncle's books, the little blonde boy indicated, pointing to the tangle of lines, curves, and symbols. I don't know what it is, but I think it's beautiful. The little brunette smiled as a finger touched the drawing to show a line. The two seated men looked up to see a red-haired girl with a round face, olive skin, and violet-gray eyes. She wore a short-sleeved beige kimono top and black pants. You made a mistake, that line shouldn't be here, but there, the redhead indicated, pointing to a slightly higher spot. Well, you should have expected that, you're just a boy. The blonde boy looked surprised and examined the line. He wasn't sure of its position, but perhaps she was right. The redhead looked up to see the Uchiha symbol on both the brunette and the blonde boy, although while she proudly displayed it on her back, he wore it only timidly on his shoulder. She sighed as she turned to head towards the platform. At that moment, the blonde Uchiha noticed the Senju symbol inscribed on one of her sleeves, while the other bore a red swirl. So, like him, she belonged to two clans. But, above all, to the Senju clan. Who does she think she is? Makoto growled, glaring at the redhead. Minato smiled gently, raising his hand to calm his cousin. But, Minato, did you see the way she looked at you? The blonde boy laughed. Don't worry, I'm used to that look. Even in the clan, I get stares like that. Because I'm a Namikaze, Minato reminded him. Most Uchiha don't think I deserve my place in your clan. They probably don't understand how someone who isn't a pureblood can live in the clan leader's residence and associate with the heiress. The girl blushed at the word, associate, but said nothing. But you're my cousin. Our grandfather is even the founder of the Uchiha clan and Konoha. You have the Sharingan and even the Mangekyo Sharingan. No one in the clan must know, Minato exclaimed. My Sharingan is my business, so don't tell anyone else. Even so, Makoto continued, as if her cousin hadn't interrupted her. You are an Uchiha. You are the son of my father's older brother. If uncle hadn't died, you would have been the heir. Minato sighed and turned his head, signaling that the discussion was over. The door opened to reveal the Hokage and the teacher. Hiruzen, around 50 years old, raised his hand and moved his fingers silently, inviting the redhead to join him. All this happened under the watchful eyes of everyone. Good morning, children, smiled the Hokage, and the children responded quickly. I'm glad to see you all in such good health, and I'd like to introduce you to Kushina. But I'll let her make her introduction. The redhead nodded gently. It's customary to give your first and last name, what you like, what you dislike, and your dream. My name is Kushina Senju Uzumaki. I like water and plants. I don't like it when people make fun of me or my dream. She smiled, becoming the first female Hokage. The declaration provoked an exclamation among the students who wondered if she was serious. Before a laugh could break the silence, they turned their heads to find a dark-haired man with dark eyes. You really think a girl can become Hokage? That position belongs to the best, it belongs to the Uchiha, not the Senju. He pointed at the girl before adding, have you seen your face? You look like a tomato that escaped from its garden. Is that why you like plants? It reminds you where you come from. Then, some children started chanting the redhead's new nickname. Tomato, tomato, tomato. The children sang with an annoying rhythm under the amused or blasé gaze of the other class members. Minato raised an eyebrow as he saw the young woman's hair gently lift. Personally, I would have made them swallow their pride, Naruto informed him. You're not your mother's son for nothing. Minato sighed. The redhead raised an eyebrow. When the redhead's hair reached high enough into the sky, a kind of fury replaced the young girl. She leapt and grabbed Fugaku before landing a right hook to his nose and continued to strike with palpable force and violence. She threw the dark-haired boy onto another aspirant, who collapsed under the Uchiha's weight. She grabbed a chair and jumped onto the next one before being stopped by the Hokage. She turned her head, snarling. Now they understand that you shouldn't insult a little chili pepper like you, the fire shadow sneered. He took another right hook to the nose from the girl. As he raised his hand to his face, the young woman turned, shaking her fist. I forbid you to mock me. I will crush anyone who laughs at my hair or my face. She roared, striking everyone in the room as if she were challenging each of them individually. Since then, the name Habanero the Bloodthirsty has stuck with her. Your mother is so violent, it's frightening. Minato sighed, massaging the back of his neck while the redhead sulked in her corner. Tisk. As if a woman couldn't become Hokage. It's just that these chauvinists are afraid to show that a woman can do better than them. Minato sighed in exasperation. What was bothersome was that she was saying that when she had just arrived in Konoha. Besides, Fugaku had only attacked her because she was a Senju, other than that, he didn't care about her. Even you didn't like me. You preferred to stay with Makoto. I didn't prefer to stay with Makoto, but I'd like to remind you that you regularly hit me because I was more skilled than you. Kushina groaned. This is a rather unusual encounter. Naruto added, still pleased to know how his parents had met. But if you couldn't stand him, how come you two ended up together? Actually, when I was just a young genin on your godfather's team, a Kumo team managed to get me, the redhead sighed. My chakra is special, which is why I was designated as the Jinchūriki of the demon behind you, the mother explained, pointing at Kurama. They were stronger than me, and above all, they were Jonin. Kushina advanced, pulled along by the Cloud Village members. At only 13, the young Kunoichi was inwardly berating herself. She'd been tricked like an idiot and hadn't been able to fight. And what a stupid idea to go swimming in the river. Well, at least they'd caught her before she could get naked. But she no longer had any weapons, and her clothes were undone, threatening to fall off with every step. Damn it, this sucks. Grumbled a ninja holding the rope that bound her wrists together. If she were older, we could have played a little. Look how flat she is. The redhead refrained from hitting him. Partly because she couldn't, but also because her hands were busy. From the start, she'd been pulling out her hair, letting it fall to the ground and marking the path it took. I know it's not cool. If I had to choose, I would have picked the little Hyuga girl who was with the little blonde boy. She may be young, but she's still got a chest compared to her, added another Jonin. The redhead frowned. So, Hikari was taking advantage of her bath to flirt with Minato. Seriously, what kind of disgraceful behavior is that? Hey, the Jonin interrupted, turning his head. Didn't you hear his sentence was choked as a kunai slammed down his throat. A flash of yellow erupted, revealing Minato as he took the kunai and threw a second before vanishing in another yellow flash. Shit, who is he? There was movement behind him. When he turned his head, he saw only the reflection of a blade that easily slit his throat. The third Jonin groaned as he lifted Kushina and placed a kunai against her throat. Minato paused to watch and assess the situation. There was a moment of stillness, during which there was no sound or movement. Damn it, you're just a genin. Get out of my way, I have a mission to complete. Minato looked at Kushina and let his blue eyes slide over her body, checking for any injuries before returning his gaze to the corner of her right mouth. Slightly swollen and reddened, a sign that she had been struck to subdue her. Are you deaf or something? Get out of my way. I forbid you to touch Kushina. The blonde cried, revealing a red pupil marked by a black swirl, resembling a six-bladed smoke shuriken. The Kumo nin couldn't understand how Minato had just managed to set him ablaze without contact, without a sign, and without concentrating chakra. He released Kushina, bringing his hands to his face to scream in pain. In a final movement, as if to salvage his honor, the Jonin tore open his shirt to reveal a vest of explosive parchment. A powerful flash spread through the air as Kushina ducked to protect herself, a futile gesture in a way. When she opened her eyes, she noticed that everything around her had turned yellow. She slowly sat up to find herself inside a ribcage erected around Minato, who was almost lying on top of her to protect her. What? This is a cursed power in my clan. The Susanoo vanished as Minato deactivated his Mangekyo Sharingan. Aside from Makoto, no one knows about this power. I don't want anyone to find out, so please don't say anything. Why? I gained this power when my mother died. When I use it, I feel like I'm losing her again and again. He smiled gently, blushing. But that didn't even cross my mind when I activated it for you. Kushina studied the young man's face before turning her head, blushing furiously. The blonde looked around to see that the forest had burned badly. Damn, I think the forest really took a beating. The Namikaze sighed. Kushina looked at her teammate before scratching the back of her head and walking towards the crater caused by the explosion. You showed me a secret, so I'll show you mine. The young woman sighed before forming a series of hand seals and placing her hands on the ground. Wood release, forest growth. The earth cracked open before about 20 trees, each around 2 meters tall, sprouted from the ground to reforest the area. Minato watched, captivated, as Kushina used wood release. A lost art, forgotten for generations, practiced only by Hashirama Senju. It was incredible. The young kunoichi struggled to her feet, wiping her brow, and turned her head toward the young Namikaze. Quote. By the way, how did you find me? The blonde raised his hand to point to a red glint on the ground. She realized he was pointing to a strand of her hair. Huh. The blonde moved closer and took a lock of her hair between his fingers, gently playing with it as it blended with his own. The question was, how could I have missed such beautiful hair? The kunoichi opened her mouth to reply, but nothing came out. Only a kind of squeak rose in her throat. Seeing the young shinobi's gaze, she realized she hadn't managed to utter a coherent sentence, let alone an intelligible one. Are you alright, Kushina? The redhead turned sharply, walking toward the camp. Kushina. Shut up. The young Uzumaki cried nervously, feeling strangely shy, small, and withdrawn. A huge smile stretched across her lips, something she desperately wanted to hide from young Namikaze. She couldn't show that she was receptive to his charms, she didn't want to reveal that he had touched her where no one had ever touched her before. Let's go back to camp. Jiraiya-sensei and Hikari are probably waiting for us. Anyway, given the explosion, they must know we've been in trouble. Kushina added, walking towards her team's rallying point. Those Kumo bastards. Naruto growled as a dark aura rose around him. Looks like I'll have to deal with them too. Kushina smiled, amused, before taking her son's hand in hers. You don't have to do this, Kushina replied. I'm fine. And, strangely enough, the ones who hurt me the most were the Konoha members. Naruto frowned, looking at his mother. What did they do to you? It wasn't really one specific event. More like a series of events, Minato explained. How can I explain? Neither Kushina nor I ever revealed our secrets. Hikari and Makoto knew, Hikari guessed, and Makoto saw it. But Hiruzen knew. We don't know how, but he knew. So, from that moment on, I felt he changed. Okay, he helped us every time. When Kushina became a Jinchūriki, her clan changed. Whether or not she mastered wood release didn't matter, but Hiruzen was there to support her. When Fugaku challenged me and I defeated him, turning the clan against me, Hiruzen was there to help and advise me too. Naruto frowned. We'd always had Hiruzen's support, but the nicer he became to us, the colder the village seemed towards Kushina. So much so that in the end, I felt like he was the only one we could trust. Even though his gaze seemed more caring and possessive towards Kushina. Quote. Why towards mom? Naruto asked. The redhead's eyes widened as she looked at the young man, her cheeks flushed and her eyes sparkling. What's wrong? He asked. You called me, mom. The redhead smiled, blushing even more. The redhead was suddenly surprised and looked away, blushing. I'm happy about that, Naruto. He scratched his cheek as Kushina continued her narration. Actually, from the moment I became a Jinchūriki, the Senju clan's perception of me changed. In their eyes, I became a user of wood release as well as the Jinchūriki of the most powerful demon. A proud sneer crossed Kurama's lips. What a shame that this fox is just a lustful brat without virtue or morals. This time, it was a grunt that escaped the fox's lips. In short, to them I had become the breeder. I can understand you, mom. The Uzumaki breathed naturally, oblivious to the tightness of Kushina's hand on her husband's, or the way her thumb slid along the back of her own hand. When the clan members decided to use me as a surrogate mother, Hiruzen always stepped in to keep us occupied. Minato and I often went on missions together, and I didn't complain, but I found it strange that he isolated us every time. It's true that I was on the verge of being raped every time I showed up at the clans, while Minato was popular with almost all the women in the village, but Hirizen's actions almost made it seem like he was waiting for something. Naruto gritted his teeth. The Senju had tried the same thing with Maeko, but Hirizen was really weird. Then, when the day of the ceremony came, I think. I've never felt so uncomfortable, but again, I owe this moment to Hirizen. I don't really know. Kushina sighed, looking at the scroll. Makoto and Hikari were at her side. The two young women were the spitting image of their daughters. All three were 17 years old and held in their hands the scroll used to choose the person to whom they would give their virginity. The three of them had become close for the simple reason that, when Minato was 15, he had become a Jonin while they were only Chunin. To allow the Namikaze to advance in his work, he had been placed in an elite Anbu team. Makoto, Hikari, and Kushina had thus been integrated into the same team. The numerous missions had strengthened their bonds to the point of creating a real closeness between them. Who did you put on your team? Asked the young redhead. Fugaku and Hiyashi. I'd rather lose my virginity to Danzo than Fugaku, Makoto confessed. He's not nice to me, and I get the feeling he's got a crush on you, Kushina. The redhead suppressed a shudder of disgust. She hated that guy. Not only was he having problems with Minato, but he kept leering at her, like she belonged to him. Well, anyway, I think I'll go back to my original choice. The other two girls turned their heads, intrigued by Makoto's remark. I won't say anything. The young woman wrote quickly and handed the scroll to the newcomer with a huge smile. A bit like those breasts. Well, it looks like the Uchiha has made up his mind. She read the paper before whistling. Wow, you're setting your sights pretty high, you know. Do you think you can handle it? Tsunade-chan, Makoto sighed, knowing full well that the young woman was just teasing her. Tsunade smiled. She looked a lot like Maeko, but she was wearing her Jonin robes. Well, who else? Hikari quickly jotted it down in her own notebook and handed it to the blonde, only 8 years older, who allowed herself an amused smile at what was written. Well, little cousin, did you figure it out? The redhead shook her head as her hand fidgeted viciously with the pen, as if she wanted to write something but couldn't. Tsunade noticed the redhead's tension and smiled. Okay, I'll leave you then and take this to the council. Kushina groaned as she handed the scroll to her cousin. Virgin, are you sure about that? The only choice that might seem acceptable to me isn't acceptable to the others, the redhead pointed out. So, I'd rather not have to choose. Anyway, it's just a test. She turned and left quickly, leaving the three young women wondering about her reaction. Since yesterday, Kushina had been constantly wondering who she would meet when she entered the room. Fugaku, Yukimura, some other guy she didn't know. Danzo. She gave a forced laugh at the latest thought that crossed her mind. It was a stupid idea, but above all, it repulsed her. When she stopped, she found herself in front of a closed door. The redhead took a deep breath and entered the room. What turned out to be a kind of waiting room. A small room with another door about 3 meters away. Although empty, she could see a sign asking her to remove her clothes. She sighed as she took off her beige top and black mini shorts, then removed her bra and panties. She quickly rummaged through her clothes for a piece of paper summarizing the situation before opening the door opposite her and stepping into a very large room. Empty. She scanned the room but saw no one. In the center stood the bed. Well, a bed, it was more of a tatami mat than a mattress given its size, but still. She noticed 2 other doors similar to hers on 2 other walls, forming a triangle with the door she had used and another one further away. She heard a door open and felt her heart pound. Kushina. The redhead jumped, staring at the naked person in front of her. Makoto. The door closed on the other side, allowing the 2 young women to observe the new scene. Hikari. What the hell is going on? Kushina sat up, her hands on her hips, before groaning. You can't lose your virginity to girls, you'd have to be an idiot to believe that. What are you doing in my room? She fell silent when she saw the 2 of them holding up a piece of paper with the room number and the time. A moment of doubt crept in, and she looked at her own, still in her hand, and sighed. Room 9 at 3:30. That was also, and more importantly, what was written on the other 2 pieces of paper. If you don't mind me asking, who did you choose? Before she could answer, the door behind her opened. The 3 of them dreaded the arrival of a 4th young woman, but there was none. Before them stood a young man with blonde hair and blue eyes. He smiled shyly as the 3 young women felt their cheeks begin to burn. He was dressed just like them, and they had the pleasure of watching Minato's reaction when he saw the 3 beautiful young women before him. Without missing a beat, they watched as the soft, flaccid members swelled with blood, grew, hardened, and rose to greet their beauty. He hadn't believed it when Hirizen had given him 2 scrolls, and even less so when he'd seen Makoto and Hikari's names, even though he'd felt a pang of regret seeing that Kushina hadn't chosen him. He'd also wanted to support her. However, the Hokage had told him he would handle the room assignments and arrange for Minato to see the redhead before or after the exam. But he never would have imagined seeing her there, like this. Completely naked. Especially now that he was standing before the three most beautiful young women of his generation, he didn't know how to react. Makoto was his cousin, and despite the impure thoughts he had whenever he saw the beautiful brunette, or even the times he'd seen her in the shower, he was finding it a little difficult to see her as such right now. Hikari was his best friend, he respected and appreciated her immensely, and yet, he couldn't deny the fact that he desired her intensely. His whole body told him that respect and appreciation wouldn't change what he was about to do to her. Kushina, on the other hand, was different, since he was completely obsessed with her. Now that he saw her like this, totally naked and practically offered up, he didn't know how to restrain his urges and calm himself down. Well, I suppose apart from Kushina, you already knew I was going to come, Minato began awkwardly, scratching the back of his head in embarrassment before looking down at his erection. He blushed furiously, since he hadn't noticed his body reacting so strongly. He stammered a few words before closing his eyes. Minato, you absolutely have to pull yourself together. You're going to be the next Hokage. 3 beautiful young women aren't going to scare you. Come on, Minato, you can't lose to those 2 idiots, Fugaku and Yukimura. You're a Namikaze. Anyway, judging by my erection, if I don't do something I'll be sleeping on crutches for days. He took a deep breath and opened his eyes to see that the 3 young women had gone off to a corner to talk quietly. What the hell is this? The red-haired girl whispered loudly. Not to be pessimistic, but this isn't going in. Makoto gestured vertically with her hands to signal to her friend to speak more quietly. Anyway, we kind of suspected it. Did you see that, yes or no? Anyway, Hikari sighed, clearly amused. We're here, so we're not going to be coaxed. I don't know about you, but I've been waiting for this since the Genin promotion. Makoto and Kushina raised an eyebrow before the young woman sighed. What, I'm allowed to, aren't I? Honestly, I wanted to marry him before I even started school. And besides, frankly, he's improved so much, Makoto added, eyeing her cousin's body. Kushina's hand closed around her cheeks as she turned the young woman's head back into the circle, and the Uchiha sighed. But, let me look. Okay, we need to decide. Kushina exclaimed. Who goes first? Hikari, Makoto, and she herself raised their hands before sighing in disappointment. Fine, we'll let him choose. They stood facing him and noticed he had moved to the bed and was trying to calm his erection by looking around for something else to contemplate besides their plump buttocks and the curves of their hips that could tempt a saint. The young man turned to see that they had finally finished their conversation and that he could easily admire their breasts. Mina-kun, the young woman asked. The blonde felt his penis twitch with pleasure at the sound of her soft, warm voice. He looked at her face, reluctantly tearing his gaze away from her chest as she smiled sweetly at him, even though she wasn't exactly brimming with confidence either. We're here then, take care of us. Lemon. How could he say no to that? He took a step and disappeared, pinning Kushina against the bed. She found herself beneath Minato, her lips captured by him and her hands held fast. Minato's kiss was feverish, easily betraying his excitement and impatience. He felt 2 movements near him and loosened his grip, taking his friend's hands and pulling them closer to kiss them in turn. Makoto quickly returned his kiss, something Kushina hadn't been able to do. In fact, her eyes were still closed and her mouth wide open, so perhaps she simply hadn't broken the kiss. The Uchiha swiftly embraced his cousin, deepening the kiss as he ran his hand over the brunette's body, grasping her buttocks and pressing her against him as his tongue breached her lips to play with Makoto's. However, before their tongues could touch, Namikaze felt himself being pulled back so that Hikari's lips pressed against his. The blonde picked up where he'd left off with his cousin, playing with his teammate's tongue. Their kiss quickly became intense as he pulled her close. He felt faint as he felt his erection pressed against a soft, rounded shape. Looking down, he noticed his penis was between Kushina's breasts, and she had snapped back to reality. He didn't know what to say. Uzumaki must be angry with him. In a way, he'd been rather rough with her during their first kiss. I don't like being talked down to, Namikaze. She jerked upright, turning the young man over, and he fell heavily onto the bed between her thighs. She herself was between his legs, facing his erect penis. She smiled as she took it in her hand, but that was all she did. She stopped immediately when the heat of his erect penis mingled with her own. As the young man stood up, Makoto and Hikari held him down by positioning themselves on his arms. All 3 of them faced his penis, and all 3 knew what to do. They had seen enough movies and read all of Jiraiya's stories. Hikari was the first to act. She bent down and, bracing herself against the mattress and the young man's lower abdomen, She flicked her tongue along his shaft to his scrotum, where the red-haired woman's breasts lay close together. I don't like it when people cut in front of me either. Kushina exclaimed, pushing Hikari aside. Makoto took his penis in her hand and began to gently masturbate him. There was no doubt the young man was aroused. The only thing he could see were Makoto and Hikari's genitals. While looking directly at them, he saw Kushina's breasts and the three goddesses fighting over his cock. The Uchiha opened her mouth and began to suck it greedily, making it clear that she wouldn't lose to anyone and that she was going to be first. Was this supposed to be the way this test was supposed to go? Normally, it was the man who took charge to reassure the young woman. Here, he was practically being raped by three nymphs. Oh, and damn it, what they were doing to him felt just too good. While Makoto was sucking him, Hikari and Kushina were busy masturbating the base of his shaft and his testicles, enjoying sucking on his foreskin or gently nibbling at it, provoking powerful but pleasurable orgasms in his penis. However, Minato was a future Hokage. He couldn't just stand by and do nothing, even if he desperately wanted to. No, he had to act. He closed his eyes and focused on the nearest beacon. Luckily, he had marked the wall. You never know. In a flash of yellow, the young man vanished and reappeared against the wall. The three kunoichi, despite being the only women in the room, were surprised but also disappointed that the young man had fled. He stared at his throbbing penis, gasping for breath as he tried to compose himself and looked at the young women. Okay, let's try to do this right. Namikaze informed him, then stood up completely before approaching the young women. As he kissed Hikari, one hand caressed the soft skin of the young woman from the Uchiha clan, while the other had already made its way to Kushina's eagerly moist opening. She would be the first, he had decided. When they had aroused him to the point of utter arousal, he had understood that he wanted Kushina to be the first whose virginity he would take. He lowered his hand onto Makoto to begin fingering her in turn, while with his other hand, he released the redhead to perform the same task on Hikari. While fingering both young brunettes, he knelt down to begin licking the beautiful Uzumaki's sex. She let out a powerful moan when the Namikaze's tongue teased her clitoris before he inserted his mouth inside the redhead. This time, it was a cry of pleasure that escaped her lips. Beside her, lying next to her, were her two friends being masturbated by the young man. Minato, Kushina moaned, playing with her lover's hair. Stop, please, she didn't feel him stop and continued. Take me. The blonde stopped licking the young woman and slowly sat up, still fingering his friends. It's going to be hard for all four of us to do this, he breathed. There's a solution, Hikari smiled. Facing him, Makoto, Kushina, and Hikari were on all fours. While the two brunettes, wet genitals were being treated by the blonde's skillful fingers, the only redhead had already taken the plunge. Her buttocks raised high, she was being taken by Namikaze, who was thrusting into her, for lack of a better word. It had hurt during the first few moments, it was true. The first few thrusts had been unpleasant, but now, damn, this was good. She'd lost all sense of sound and light because she was screaming with pleasure every time he hit her cervix, and her eyes rolled back as he thrust as deep inside her as he could. Minato was also feeling quite overwhelmed. He was really struggling to control his own body and felt like he was going to lose control with every thrust. He forced himself to keep his hands inside her wet, hot, dripping genitals, which seemed to be calling to his penis. Mina-kun, Kushina moaned. I'm going to come, the red-haired girl screamed. If he weren't so focused on not favoring one over the other, he would have answered that he was too. He let out a groan as he had to release the other genitals to place his hands on Kushina's hips to withdraw. He could not foresee that chains would emerge from his body and wrap around his arms and hips to prevent him from withdrawing. I'm coming, Kushina screamed as Minato ejaculated inside her, filling her with his semen and making her cry out in pleasure. The chains vanished along with Kushina's consciousness. She collapsed onto the mattress, panting, her eyes closed, utterly exhausted, too exhausted to stay awake. Minato withdrew to see that the young woman's sex was dripping with his seed. He was turned over and kissed, and the Hyuga clan member laid him down so she was on top of him. Makoto watched her friend and sighed. It's my turn. Hikari groaned before being pushed aside, but the white-eyed brunette wouldn't let herself be pushed. Hikari shoved her friend aside before impaling herself on her best friend's penis. She cried out in pain as she felt the blonde man's glands forced against her cervix. Clearly, his penis was larger than she could fit inside. Quickly, the young woman began to move, riding up and down his shaft, gritting her teeth in pain, but she remained focused enough to continue, though far too aroused to think about it further. She suddenly felt a surge of heat, coinciding precisely with the moment her body began to accept the treatment. Minato held the Hyuga's hips before Makoto came to complain. Hey, Hikari, you're totally hogging him. The blonde man grabbed his cousin's hips and pulled her onto his shoulders before positioning himself between her thighs. He gently raised his head to lick the Uchiha's genitals, and she took a deep breath before moaning loudly. Hikari suddenly became unrestrained as Makoto surrendered to the pleasure with great satisfaction. The Sharingan wielder leaned down to suckle at his friend's breasts, thus hastening the moment when Hinata's mother would climax and free up her place. Hikari easily understood what her friend was aiming for, but couldn't find the strength to stop her. While she suckled one of her hardened nipples, and her other hand played with her neglected breast, Makoto's other hand teased the young woman's swollen clitoris. The hip movements became increasingly rapid, abrupt, and swift, attempting to penetrate as deeply as possible. However, it became too much for Hikari to endure, and she arched her back with a cry, quickly joined by Makoto, who had just succumbed to her lover's cunnilingus. "Oh my god," Hikari moaned, collapsing to the side, completely exhausted from the orgasm she had just experienced. Minato's penis was still erect despite the fact that he had ejaculated for the second time and with two different women. Makoto smiled as she kissed her cousin. "Makoto." The blonde man breathed before a smile stretched across the young woman's lips. She embraced him before lying down and spreading her thighs. "Your heart already belongs to someone else, but I know you, Minato. You're not the kind of man to refuse to help others. So, will you help me soothe this fire that's burning inside me?" Minato felt his sex say yes. He bent down to kiss her as he gently entered her, then he thrust into her with a powerful stroke. She arched her back to cry out in pain but resigned herself to doing or saying nothing more. She could endure it. She managed to put up with Kushina when she had her period, so she should be able to handle this. He moved slowly inside her, trying to ease the pain since she clearly couldn't do anything for herself. Slowly, Makoto began to moan, her breathing becoming faster and faster. Her body was heating up, she was starting to feel the pleasure that had overwhelmed her companions, and she understood what had caused them to completely lose track of. Oh, screw it, too much to say and think. She couldn't even keep her eyes open anymore, so why try to think? Makoto wrapped her legs around the young man's hips and let out a cry of pleasure before he kissed her so they could come together in a muffled cry and a powerful groan. Minato withdrew from the young woman, who was panting and half-conscious. The young man lay down on the bed. He was surrounded by the three young women and smiled weakly. At least they had gotten what they wanted. End of lemon. "I really didn't need to know that," commented Naruto. "I quite liked it," smiled Kurama. "Yeah, that doesn't surprise me," the redhead added. "Actually, why are you telling me all this?" "To show you that your father is a deviant," Kushina commented. "Can you imagine? He slept with Makoto, an Uchiha, with Hikari, a Hyuga, and me, an Uzumaki, a Senju, and a Jinchūriki. And if it had only been once. I remember that Makoto, Hikari, your father, and I often had a great time. Well, when they got married, it was a little harder to organize, especially since none of them wanted to or had a choice, but oh well. There's always a way to have a good time." Kushina smiled as Minato clapped his hands to his head, shaking it from side to side in exasperation. "Don't you think your father is weird? Sleeping with an Uchiha, a Hyuga, a Senju Uzumaki Jinchūriki. Some would have thought he was crazy to have 3 enemy clans and a Jinchūriki on his list of conquests, don't you think?" "Yes, that's for sure," Naruto added softly, careful not to mention that he was just like his father. "Except there weren't 3 of them, but 5. Otherwise, nothing too strange to tell." Kushina smiled. Quote, "We have a few anecdotes if you want." "No, we have something else to tell, probably more important than the ceremony or the evenings we spent with Makoto and Hikari," Minato added. "No, Naruto, I'd like to tell you about the day you were born," the redhead frowned. "The first thing you need to know is that Kushina's pregnancy, as well as our bond, the love that united us, was a secret." Minato's expression became serious. The man wore a black mask marked with flames surrounding 2 holes from which shone 2 blood-red pupils marked with black commas. Naruto's birth had been over barely 4 minutes ago, and here he was, captured by an unknown person. He had just killed the nurses and probably the Anbu who were there to guard the passage. "Get away from the Jinchūriki, 4th Hokage, or this child won't live more than a few minutes," the masked Uchiha threatened, placing a kunai against Naruto's throat. "Good, since you don't seem to care about a cripple." He threw the child into the air. Minato was faster and caught the child mid-air before he noticed anything. Damn, explosives, he grabbed his son before a powerful flash occurred, causing a demented explosion that ravaged the room. When Minato opened his eyes, clutching his son, he found himself encased in a yellow ribcage. He looked around to see that the explosion had only caused him to lose sight of it. Now, Kushina and the Uchiha were gone. Damn it, he looked down and raged quietly. "I have to get Naruto to safety, that's the most important thing." He vanished in a flash of yellow. Kushina was struggling, chained to 4 rocks, feeling the 9 tails emerging from her body, its blood-red aura seeping from her skin. The sensation was so heavy and sticky, it felt like she was sweating lead. She cried out in pain as she felt her stomach contort under the power of the demonic chakra. The Uchiha turned her head to see another man approaching, wearing the same outfit and a mask with grooves carved like wood. "Is it almost over?" asked the dark-haired man with the wooden mask. "The 9 tails will be released soon, it's only a matter of minutes," the man with the fire mask indicated. "How is Konoha doing?" "The village is comfortably asleep, don't worry. I just hope he was right. For now, the information he gave us is accurate, so we have no reason to doubt him," replied the Uchiha. A scream emanated from Kushina as she seemed almost to vomit chakra. The red mass rose into the air, the pressure and weight of this energy allowing the redhead to distinctly feel her bones break and her body burn as if she had just been thrown into the flames of hell. "QB is here," the immense fox appeared above Kushina, howling at the moon, finally freed from these miserable human prisons. When the animal lowered its eyes to see those who had just freed it, its red pupils met those of the masked man with the Sharingan. Quickly, due to its weak resistance after being imprisoned, QB was overwhelmed by the genjutsu. "Good, now, kill her." QB raised its hand before bringing it down on the redhead. When the paw exploded into the ground, the dark-haired man with the wooden mask turned his head to see Minato holding his companion in his arms. He gazed at his beloved, exhausted, tearful, and trembling with pain. She still managed to speak through a groan of agony. "How are you, Naruto?" The Namikaze smiled, looking at his companion. "He's safe." After casting a contemptuous glance at his opponents, he vanished in a flash of yellow. The Uchiha turned his head toward Kurama and chuckled softly, raising his hand, index and middle fingers pointed skyward. "Good little dog." Now, his Sharingan began to glow before he added, "Attack." Minato stood on the engraved head that depicted his face. He watched Kurama wreak havoc. "This is terrible. I'm too late. I have to stop it." A blast of air made his head spin. He raised his hand to block the punch hurtling towards him, but couldn't completely stop it. The fist lodged itself in his forearm, forcing it down onto his chest before sending it flying. The impact was so powerful that Minato groaned through the Konoha sky. He turned his head to see that the force of the blow would break his neck. He vanished in a flash of yellow, only to reappear in a clearing. He still managed to slide to the ground, coughing as he looked at his fist and the bruise slowly emerging on his arm. "Damn, he almost broke my arm." A flash of light made his head spin, and he saw the fireball hurtling towards him. With a groan, Minato summoned his Susanoo and parried the attack before unleashing the black flames of Amaterasu. The stranger with the fire mask leapt into the air before unleashing a barrage of kunai charged with Raiden chakra. Minato jumped back before feeling another movement behind him. He turned to see a tree falling on top of him. The dark-haired man threw a kunai at the tree before the Susanoo could stop it. The kunai began to vibrate before exploding, producing sound waves. Minato cried out, covering his ears. A lapse in concentration cancelled the Susanoo before a newcomer arrived. His arm charged with lightning and swung powerfully. The blond man's eyes widened before the dark-haired man with the wooden mask landed a punch to his stomach. The chakra explosion caused Namikaze to cough up blood before he was sent flying. "That's it. I thought you'd be stronger," the man with the fire mask sneered. Minato got to his feet, feeling his ribs. Clearly, he had several broken ribs and a fractured arm. He knew he wasn't in a position to win. At least not if the fight dragged on. The blond man straightened up and threw a kunai, which the attacker in close combat dodged. In a flash, Minato appeared behind him and struck. A whistling sound sent him flying backward, preventing him from dodging a fireball that would have killed him. Emerging from the flames, the dark-haired man with the wooden mask leapt forward to deliver a spinning kick. The blonde still managed to retaliate with a palm strike to the dark-haired man's stomach. However, the blow struck the young man squarely in the side, sending him crashing a short distance away. "Damn, he got me," groaned the man with the wooden mask. "It's almost over," informed the Uchiha. "Senju and Uchiha," growled Minato, getting to his feet. "You're using the flame and lightning arcana." He laughed. "Now I've won." Minato threw a kunai at the man with the fire mask. The latter sighed, throwing another kunai to block the first, sending it crashing to the ground, but Minato wasn't fooled. Shuriken Cage Bunshin. The blades multiplied, creating such a vast teleportation zone that neither could anticipate it. The Senju raised his arm to slam it to the ground and create a screen of concealment with the rocks. However, he failed to register Minato's appearance right in front of him. He held a ball of light in his hand. Rasengan. In a desperate move, he launched his fist to strike the fourth Hokage's attack. Despite the lightning around his arm and the striking power, it was the orb that won. The sphere exploded, launching his enemy into the air as his arm twisted abnormally. The acolyte saw his ally's distress and rushed to his aid, passing through the Namikaze's teleportation zone. Big mistake, because the latter appeared at his side and used one of his kunai to pierce the Uchiha through the stomach. The latter groaned in pain before Minato concentrated his chakra in his palm. It's over. A voice yelled from behind him. The enemy launched his good fist at Minato, who vanished in a flash, allowing the Senju to continue on his way and strike the Uchiha. Minato reappeared further away and watched the Senju check on his ally before turning around. You son of a bitch. I have to finish you off, Minato declared as his Susanoo appeared around him. An earthquake made him turn his head toward the village. Both are injured, but can still be a threat, and Kurama will destroy everything if I don't do something. With a groan, he turned toward the two enemies. He realized too late that a jaw of earth had just swallowed them both and disappeared. Damn it. There's nothing I can do now. I have to deal with Kurama, otherwise it'll only get worse. What happened to make it end like this? Kyuubi had been unleashed thanks to their respective weaknesses, just enough to attack Naruto. Like good parents, they had intervened, but it was foolish. They should have taken Naruto back to prevent it. Now that they thought about it, it was obvious. But no, they had made their choices and given their lives to save one. The one that mattered more than anything, their child's. The one who would manage to forge a path they could only imagine. They both knew Naruto would succeed in establishing order. Now that they had both protected their child, they both found themselves pierced by that immense claw and living their final moments. Kushina laughed, wiping her eyes. How stupid of me, Kushina sighed. Minato, you're wrong. Naruto will succeed. Because he's the only one who can. Naruto will manage to restore balance, something we so desperately wanted. I know, Kushina. He's our child, I trust him. The young man confessed, spitting up blood. We who wanted to live our love openly. You'll see that Naruto will succeed where we've failed so many times. Naruto will be the one to bring peace and unity to this world. He is the child of the prophecy. Forget that damn prophecy, will you? Kushina smiled with difficulty. Minato. Don't waste any more time, Kushina. Say goodbye to Naruto, okay? Naruto, listen to your mother. I'm sorry I can't be there for your first steps, your first words, your first outing with your friends, and your first date. I'll never know how to atone for my mistakes, which mean you'll inherit our burdens, but I know you'll get through this. So, take care of yourself. Find friends you feel comfortable with, don't be disrespectful to your elders, eat and sleep as much as you need, don't neglect your hygiene, and take care of yourself. Also, remember that, no matter where you are, what you're doing, or who you're with, I'll accept it and I'll support you. To me, nothing is more important than you. The tears streaming down her cheeks mingled with the blood flowing from her mouth. Don't forget me, and don't forget who you are. You are the son of the fourth Hokage and Habanero, and I love you, Naruto. I love you with all my heart. She fell silent, her teeth clenching. Sorry, Minato, it seems I've taken up a bit of your speaking time. It's nothing, Kushina, the Namikaze said, looking at the god of death. Naruto, I only have one thing to add. Whatever your choices, what matters to your mother and me is that you are happy. We love you, Naruto, never forget that. When you feel alone and think all is lost, remember that you carry within you the will of your parents. We will always be with you. Then, he formed a series of hand seals, accompanied by Kushina. We love you, Naruto, with all our hearts. The god of death and a wooden dragon swooped down on the demon, who let out a roar before being sealed away. A long silence followed the end of the story. Naruto stared into space, lost in thought. Dad, that scene, I've seen it before, Minato said, surprised, before Naruto added, when that scene came back to me, my eye changed. Why did I see that if I wasn't supposed to, since I was blind? Minato placed his hand on his chin and sighed. I think the fact that my eyes were inside you, along with my chakra, must have created some kind of memory link. I can't explain it, but it seems to me that two Sharingan are linked. My eyes saw that, so maybe you were able to see it because of that. Naruto nodded gently before looking at his parents. What is it? What do you want me to do? What do you mean when you tell me to create order out of chaos? Your father and I love each other. And we love you even more. But if Kurama hadn't intervened, we never would have been able to live together. The Uchiha and Senju clans are rivals, so you could have been targeted because you are an aberration. You're not supposed to exist in this world, and that's what we wanted to change. Here, everyone is governed by some kind of ancient law. Why shouldn't people be able to do what they want without worrying about what others think? In a world where the slightest discord can start a war, your father and I dreamed of a place where we would all be equal, free to do as we please without having to answer to anyone. A new society not ruled by manipulative people seeking to hold on to power, but by people who truly believe in this dream. Kushina smiled, a little embarrassed to say this to her son. I wanted a world where you could live and thrive without having to fear anyone because you're different. Whether you're from another clan, another color, blind, deaf, mute. I would have liked a world that accepted everyone without distinction, that's all. She looked nostalgic. That's what Uzu was like. The redhead confessed. A united society where everyone helped and supported each other, one big family. I so wish my village could have survived instead of disappearing. Just like our family. I will, Naruto announced simply. I will restore this world, I will rebuild this society. Minato and Kushina were surprised. My goal isn't so far removed, actually. What I desire is to abolish this absurd regime that is the shinobi system, which transforms the ninja into a weapon without feelings. This system that considers you unworthy of life because you're different. Nemesis is here for that. We will restore justice to this rotten world. Minato frowned. My primary desire is to establish a society where those who have been oppressed can demonstrate their strength and turn against those who have exploited them. Kushina looked at her child as Minato pondered. Then do it, Kushina simply stated, surprising Naruto. He was certain she would have opposed it, he himself had some doubts, wanting to protect Saya, Maeko, and Hinata. Understand me, Naruto. I've seen the good and some bad sides of the shinobi system, I know it's not suitable, so. Do what you want, I support you 200%. Set the world ablaze, if that's what you want, I won't oppose it. Because I love you and I trust you. Are you reckless? Minato asked. I trust Naruto, but the only thing I ask of him is not to risk his life. I'm sure he's not doing it for bad reasons, so I accept what you're doing and will do. Because you're my son, and I love you no matter what you do. Naruto watched his parents before they began to glow. Well, it seems this is over. No, Naruto cried, straightening up as his parents did the same. Don't go. Please. Don't leave me. Not again, no. The redhead begged, under the watchful eyes of Kurama and his parents. Naruto, we're not leaving you. We're staying here, Kushina indicated, placing her hand on the young man's heart. We never abandoned you. The redhead rushed to embrace his parents, who smiled back. We love you, Naruto. As long as you think of us, we will never disappear. I still need you, Naruto begged, tears welling in his eyes. Don't leave me alone. The people you truly need are waiting for you, Naruto. You're not alone anymore, not now, his father replied as he and his mother slowly vanished. Soon, only their silhouettes remained, in which he could discern his parents' smiles and his mother's tears. I love you, Naruto finally added as his parents disappeared. We love you too, Naruto, his mother's voice persisted. More than you could ever imagine. Naruto fell to his knees, tears streaming down his cheeks. He remained there, impassive, watching where his parents had been for a few moments. He felt two arms wrap around his torso, and a head rested on his back. I know it's hard, Naruto, Kurama breathed, aware that the Uzumaki had just discovered love and lost it immediately. The only people truly capable of teaching a child about love were their parents. The orange-haired girl tightened her grip to reassure the young man, who was clenching his teeth to stop his sobs. Naruto. They'll see. I will make their dream come true, Kurama. The demon shuddered suddenly before turning her head. The expanse they were in was immaculately white, reflecting a certain serenity in her mind. So, what was that black mist that was just starting to appear? I will create this society that was so dear to them. He took a deep breath before exhaling softly. The whole world has conspired against my family, against my clan, against my clans. Konoha destroyed the Uchiha clan because they were afraid of them, just like Uzu. My village was destroyed because it symbolized progress. Naruto shouted as the mist Kurama saw thickened even further. Since this world wanted to destroy my clan, then I will ensure its survival. Alin is an Uzumaki, and she will live as such. Naruto, I beg you, calm down. Kurama almost pleaded, feeling the unpleasant sensation emanating from the mist. Kurama, we will build a new world. And since they sought to exclude the Uzumaki, then the Uzumaki will be in charge of this world. He straightened up, breaking free from his demon's comforting embrace. It's time, Kurama. Nemesis is about to act. They'll learn the hard way that he who sows the wind reaps the whirlwind. Chapter 45, Reap the Whirlwind. Will you finally show me the results of so many years of preparation, Naruto? The Hokage had kept everyone in suspense. He was in a very difficult position, but he wasn't afraid at all. He was between two enemy groups. But he had faith in his abilities. Behind him were Saya Uchiha, Hinata Hyuga, and Maeko Senju, 3 kunoichi he was closely monitoring to control as much as possible the path they were to take. Unfortunately, it seemed, they had done the opposite of what he had planned. They were accompanied by Itachi Uchiha, Neji Hyuga, and Kurama Senju, their elders, but the first and third were different. As S-rank criminals, the two possessed so much power and potential that their mere presence made the tension palpable. On the other side were the last two Sannin, who seemed somewhat loyal to Konoha, but even more so to Naruto, the one in the center. Beside him was Fu, Nanabe's Jinchūriki, an unexpected addition since she hadn't been part of the plan. But he didn't care, as he sensed that the real danger came from Naruto, not even from the Sannin or the two S-rank criminals behind him. Something told him that the Uzumaki was going to cause him more trouble than he could possibly handle, but oh well. He was the third Hokage of Konoha, the professor, he should be able to deal with this unstable kid. Despite the fury he had felt earlier, he seemed to be containing his anger, adopting a relatively calm expression that, in a way, seemed to reassure the young women behind him. Therefore, he was trying to protect them from something, how sweet. So, what do you say, Naruto? So many years of preparation. The young man grinned, glaring at his opponent. As I suspected, living in a village like this wasn't exactly unexpected, was it? The village chief smiled gently, slowly removing his white tunic to reveal a strange black and gold armor, which surprised the Sannin more than the other Jonin, but hardly impressed Naruto, Fu, Itachi, or even Kurama. Tell me, when my parents gave you their last wishes, did you have the guts to tell them you had something else planned for me? Were you able to look my parents straight in the eye and tell them you planned for them to sleep together during the ceremony? Hiruzen laughed, amused by the young man. He didn't know how, but it seemed this young man knew far more than he should have. Well, where did you get such information? Had Jiraiya gotten hold of the videos I kept in my dresser? When Naruto turned his head, his godfather was already gone. A sigh escaped the Uzumaki's lips, that guy was truly beyond redemption. You know what amuses me most? Your father still slept with the mothers of two of your friends. It makes you wonder if Itachi isn't your half-brother. But anyway, as interesting as the crossbreeding between your father and Makoto or Hikari might be, it pales in comparison to the union of your two parents. Saya and Hinata exchanged glances, quite bewildered to learn that Naruto's father, theoretically their stepfather, had slept with their friend's mother. They already knew about their own mother, but this was strange. Look, Makoto only offered the Sharingan, but your father already had that. Hikari offered the Byakugan, but that's nothing compared to Wood Release, that physical power and sealing technique so typical of the Uzumaki clan. I put all my faith in your mother. He sighed. What a shame they were so desperate to change things and forge a better path for you. He looked at Naruto and waved his hand, as if to clear up a misunderstanding. Let's be clear, Naruto, your parents wanted a better world for you, and I agreed. But the idea of dismantling the ruling system in Konoha to create another one. It wasn't wise, it would have taken too long, and above all, it would have put our entire village in danger. Did you have anything to do with their deaths? Naruto asked. My mother was a Senju, my father was an Uchiha, and the number of people who knew couldn't have been more than 10. You, Jiraiya, Tsunade, Obito, Rin, Kakashi, Makoto, Hikari, Itachi, and Kurama. Jiraiya didn't know when the birth would take place. Tsunade was still recovering from childbirth. Obito, Rin, and Kakashi only knew about my birth, but not the date or the place. Makoto and Hikari loved my parents, not just as friends, I think, but they would never have done that. Itachi and Kurama were only 6 years old. The only one who knew where, when, and how it would happen was you. So I'm going to ask you again. Do you have any connection to that guy's attack during my birth? Do you have any connection to the Nine-Tails attack on this village? Is it your fault that my parents are dead? My fault, Hiruzen exclaimed. I didn't force your father to use the dead-bound seal. I didn't ask your parents to sacrifice themselves so that the Nine-Tails attack wouldn't reach you. I didn't remove the Nine-Tails. I certainly didn't hold your father back while the Nine-Tails was devastating the village. He shrugged, shaking his head. Why blame me? Because I never said my father was held back. Hiruzen froze. Indeed, now that he thought about it, Naruto hadn't said anything of the sort. So I conclude that, even if you didn't do anything, you're not innocent. Did you tell that guy when and where to come to take the Nine-Tails from my mother? The Hokage sighed. In any case, the only people present had already chosen to rebel against Konoha, so they had to be killed on sight. Which means that after forcing Kurama to attack the village, you managed to remove the Uchiha from Konoha's control while keeping the Senju out of the picture thanks to Maeko and Tsunade, while the Hyuga were held back by the council and the history of this branch family and main branch. Everything was fine, actually, since you remained on your throne and directed all operations from above, wasn't it? The Sarutobi whistled before applauding. Well, Naruto, you're impressive. I thought you were the perfect blend of your father and mother. But this is amazing. What a shame that nothing said here carries any weight. After all, the people behind me are rebels who attacked Konoha. That girl is a Jinchuriki who has nothing to do with Konoha. The Sannin who could have any influence weren't even here, and you. Poor Naruto, after everything that's happened in your life, you still think a single person will believe your nonsense. Please, you should know by now. You're undoubtedly the most hated person in Konoha and the Land of Fire, who would believe you? I don't want to be believed. I'm going to do what my parents asked of me. I'm going to forge a new path. I'm going to create a new world where your principles are worthless. I am Naruto Uzumaki Namikaze Uchiha Senju, leader and founder of Nemesis. We will bring justice to this world. He raised his hand and released Kubikiribocho from his seal, assuming a fighting stance against the Hokage. The Hokage smiled, summoning a strange black and gold staff. My first act will be to kill you, Hiruzen Sarutobi. The Hokage suppressed a laugh and lunged at Uzumaki. He swung his staff above his head and delivered a powerful sideways blow. Naruto positioned his weapon to block it, but the indestructible staff wasn't indestructible for nothing. He struck the weapon so hard that it cracked under the impact, sending the redhead flying sideways. Clearly, he wasn't Hokage for nothing. Earth release, Earth shurikens. The ground warped before launching several volleys of shuriken composed of rock and earth. Uzumaki looked at the weapons before vanishing in a flash of red. Earth release, Earth clone. The ground warped, releasing a clone of Hiruzen who blocked the attack meant to strike him from behind. Earth release, defragmentation and Earth release, projection. The clone transformed into a multitude of small pebbles before being hurled at the young man. The latter vanished just before being hit. This time, Hiruzen struck the ground with his staff. Diamond Forest. The staff sank into the ground before about 30 replicas erupted from the earth. Unfortunately, since Kubikiribocho had a hole in it, the staff passed right through the middle, blocking their movement. Before Uzumaki could do anything, Hiruzen struck his weapon with his palm. Diamond Cage. The forest of vertical staffs was granted horizontal branches that created a multitude of cages in which Naruto was trapped. The cage must have been at least 2 meters long, and each bar was 10 centimeters wide with a gap of about 30 centimeters between them. Hiruzen jumped onto a building, formed a series of hand seals, and took a deep breath. Fire release, Dragon's Inferno. He exhaled a thread of flame that crashed to the ground before the blast transformed into a massive wave of fire that completely engulfed the series of cages formed by his flurry of attacks. Helplessness. That was undoubtedly the feeling that had just taken root in the hearts of the spectators, as well as in the victims. Naruto hadn't had a chance to land a single attack. He had only managed to dodge twice and endure a blow before being trapped like an animal and then incinerated by the fiery breath of the Shadow of Fire. The latter scrutinized the blazing area, glistening with flames, before sighing. Perhaps he had given this boy too much importance. The light grew dimmer before becoming strangely pale. Hiruzen turned his attention back to the bars of his cages, watching them slowly burn away. The fire had turned black with reddish reflections. Whatever it was, the power was enough to devour the diamond cages. The flames dissipated, revealing Naruto, encased in an orange-colored ribcage. As I suspected, fighting the Hokage is impossible unless you're at 100%. Uzumaki resigned himself to sheathing his blade. It would be useless here. Extending his arm, he summoned his sword of despair. Come on. Hiruzen simply smiled. This kid was certainly entertaining. Hiruzen lunged at Naruto, who only managed to prepare a strike before extending his arm with a fluid motion. The burgundy blade sent a long trail of flames flying, but the Hokage stepped over it and formed a series of hand seals. Earth release, Swamp of Limbo. Naruto's feet sank into the ground, which had become strangely soft and liquid. Without waiting, the Hokage finished his attack. Fire release, Fire Dragon's Breath. He spat out a fireball that transformed into a dragon, which swooped down on the redhead. He, in turn, composed a series of signs. Wood release, the Tree of Hell. The earth heaved up, revealing a tree with dark bark and blazing leaves. The dragon's flames mingled with the tree, only making it grow larger. A black root burst from the swamp, lifting Uzumaki, who formed another series of hand seals. Wind release, Storm Breath. He jumped backward, exhaled forcefully, and was propelled back to solid ground. He generated a powerful wind tunnel, reaching speeds of 150 kilometers per hour. The wind struck the tree, carrying the flames with it, and engulfed the Hokage. Using his staff, extending it while pushing off the ground, Hiruzen rose above the tunnel of fire. While still airborne, preparing his next attack, he saw Naruto form a series of hand seals. Earth release, Earth Dragon. The earth rose up, releasing 5 dragon heads that attacked the gray-haired boy. Earth release, Earth Dragon. The same attack erupted from the ground, except this time there were 10 dragons. 5 were enough to block Naruto's 5, while the other 5 attacked Uzumaki. He simply swung a circular sword strike, unleashing a volley of flames that easily devoured the earth summons. The redhead leapt into the air and vanished in a flash of blood, landing behind his opponent, arms raised. But Hiruzen had already countered with a swinging attack. Uzumaki placed his palm on the weapon and used it as leverage to launch himself, avoiding being hit. Still in his spinning motion, he launched 2 shuriken. Shadow Shuriken. The 2 stars multiplied, transforming into a barrage of projectiles. Uzumaki quickly formed hand seals before a hand leapt from the ground to block the blades. In a controlled somersault, the redhead landed on the same wooden monster he had summoned against Gaara 3 years prior. The infamous wood golem. The very same one my late master used, so I know its weakness. He formed a series of hand seals before unleashing a fireball that even the Uchiha would have revered. Fire release, Solar Fireball. Naruto didn't even flinch and just smiled. When the fireball exploded on the golem's body, the resulting light and heat wave caused temporary blindness, depriving the spectators of their sight and thus both combatants. Saya and Itachi activated their dojutsu to see the young man, but the brunette gritted her teeth as her eye went blank. Saya, don't use your Sharingan. Mom didn't use it to protect you. And if you also have the Mangekyo Sharingan, you could kill him. The brunette quickly brought her hand to her stomach. Her goal wasn't to kill him, so she stopped using her dojutsu. When she raised her head, she noticed that the heat wave had transformed into a ring of fire. A red aura surrounded them before a shield rose before them. The brunette looked at her brother, who had just activated his Susanoo. He looked at his sister and smiled, amused. I don't think I'm expecting a child. Itachi, Kurama interjected. We should withdraw. Soon, the conflict between Naruto and Hiruzen will generate too much collateral damage. For now, the Anbu are ordered to let it go, but if this continues, Konoha's troops will be here within an hour, at the very most. What do you suggest? Should we leave Naruto alone or summon a Kekai? Itachi asked, using the Yata mirror to protect those inside his Susanoo. Kurama sighed, watching the fireball continue to burn within the building. We should at least keep our distance. Maeko jumped, looking around. Hinata and Neji had activated their dojutsu and seemed to be searching for something. What is it, Maeko? The blonde wanted to say something, but the blast from the attack made the humanoid tremble. They turned their attention back to the fight and saw that the fireball had been blocked by a kind of strangely orange wooden golem wielding a black fire blade weighted to its waist. Using Susanoo as a simple chakra emanation doesn't make it extremely durable, but covering it with a different material increases its power while decreasing the chakra required to create it. But is it wise to combine it with wood release? Naruto was inside his Susanoo, which itself covered the wooden golem. Hiruzen was trapped there, as he didn't know the Susanoo's power. His master had been a Senju, and very few Uchiha mastered this technique under normal circumstances. Now, the Hokage still had to struggle to find the technique's weaknesses. Normally, it was a being composed of solidified chakra, so with enough force, it should be possible to break it and pass through. But that didn't happen. The redhead deactivated this protection himself. He's an idiot. Either he thinks I can't win, or it takes too much chakra, Hiruzen mused before lunging at the young man. He swung his weapon above his head before delivering a vertical slash to deflect the golem's punch, sending it crashing to the ground. He then continued along the golem's arm and covered the last few meters with a powerful jump that brought him close to Naruto. The redhead had armed his arm and was preparing to strike. Diamond Charge. Thunderous strike, upsetting the sky. The contact between the fist and the weapon's tip was explosive, creating a shockwave of lightning that rippled through the air. Hiruzen, with no footing, was thrown backward and pursued by the barrage of lightning generated by the Uzumaki. The latter pushed off his feet and lunged at the old man, who extended his staff to brace it against the ground and rise higher before countering with an upward, spinning strike. Performing a somersault, the young man landed on the staff and launched himself towards the old man. He dropped forward, placed his hand on the weapon, and rotated his shoulder to kick the Hokage in the jaw. The Hokage gritted his teeth as he was repelled and had to drop his weapon. Using it as leverage again, Naruto propelled himself towards his opponent, sending the staff crashing to the ground. Hiruzen formed a series of hand seals and turned towards Uzumaki. Fire release, Dragon's Inferno. Uzumaki threw a kunai that pierced the flames and reached the shadow of fire. His eyes widened as he saw the other man appear in a red flash, holding a swirling ball of chakra in his hand. Son of Rasengan. Naruto shouted, plunging the swirling orb into his opponent's stomach. The attack spun the fire shadow around and threw him to the ground, but his armor had protected him from direct physical damage, meaning Hiruzen was only stunned by the attack and not killed with a twisted spine as he had hoped. No matter, if he could follow up with the other attack, then perhaps he could. Earth release, Mountain Golem. The earth heaved to unimaginable proportions. Even buildings were lifted as a titan roughly 50 meters tall confronted Naruto. Too surprised by the onslaught, the Uzumaki didn't even consider dodging the car-sized attack. The redhead was thrown into the village, smashing through a district, wall after wall, until he reached the very center of the village. He slowly got to his feet, spitting up blood, and saw that the titan was coming towards him. How could something so huge even exist? Surprised, Hiruzen smiled. The mountain golem is different from the earth golem because it's made of rock and is therefore much less susceptible to other elements. Naruto straightened up before looking at Hiruzen. Konoha mustn't be destroyed then, give up and let it happen. Go to hell. Why? Look at yourself. You've evolved exactly as I wanted, you've become powerful. Your level surpasses that of many Anbu and, honestly, you're giving me a hard time. You possess the most powerful and rarest hereditary attributes in this world now, how can you ruin everything like this? Hiruzen asked. Look at yourself. Hiruzen yelled. You've managed to master wood release and the Sharingan, you control these powers as if they were just low-level abilities. You have the potential to become the ultimate warrior. Why are you refusing your destiny, Naruto? You are destined to become the weapon that nothing can stop, cease your madness and return to the right path. I am a weapon, but you cannot stop me, Hiruzen. Naruto exclaimed, clutching his stomach. You created a monster to keep it on a leash and make it attack whenever you please, but you will learn that not all beasts can be muzzled. The Uzumaki added as his chakra exploded around him. I have decided to break free from these shackles that are the shinobi. Konoha is a tree, as you so often say. He swung his wrist, unleashing a violent mass of red chakra that rose into the sky, completely engulfing Naruto. I have come to cut it down. Him and the forest surrounding it. I will burn it all to create fertile land and I will build a new world. Hiruzen swallowed hard when he saw Kyubi, the true nine-tailed fox demon, facing him. Those glowing red eyes, those sharp teeth, that orange fur atop bulging muscles, powerful tails whipping in the wind, and that devastating aura. No doubt about it, Naruto had unleashed the demon, but why then? Why does this monster have the same swirls in its eyes as Naruto? Unless it. No, it's impossible, I am a perfect Jinchūriki now. The demon proclaimed, without opening its mouth. The voice sounded human, though much more guttural. Now, I will deal with you, shadow of fire. Kyubi raised its hand before striking him down. The golem raised both arms and parried the blow but was hurled against the Hokage mountain. I can't maintain this form for more than 3 minutes. For a first transformation, it's a bit pathetic, but if I can test it a little longer, then I should be able to win after I return to my normal self. Launching himself swiftly, Uzumaki positioned himself above his opponent and delivered a powerful punch that shattered the golem's face, cracking the cliff, shattering the third Hokage's face, and splitting the mountain in two. The golem still managed to counter with a powerful left hook. The power was impressive, but Kurama barely turned his head. The beast raised its other hand before sensing the imminent danger. With a powerful leap, Naruto retreated and dodged the lava fist that had just hurtled toward his head. By combining my sun golem and my mountain golem, I can form the volcano golem, Hiruzen informed his golem, which was dripping with lava. His power is sufficient to defeat summons, so I think a biju should be enough. A laugh emanated from the fox before his fur bristled and an orange chakra jelly began to flow down his body. Forming a chakra armor around him, an immense burgundy fire katana emerged in his hand under the astonished gaze of those witnessing this fight. Naruto, what are you doing? Tsunade suddenly breathed. Transforming into Kurama, right here in the village, and using Susanoo on such a large area. Your chakra will melt like snow in the sun. The blonde turned to Jiraiya and Fu. The green-haired girl's eyes sparkled at the sight of such a massive power before her, a huge smile stretching her lips before she looked towards the clan members, located a few meters away. Itachi, we'll have to reach him, his power is enormous but his chakra is depleting faster than Hiruzen's. The toad Sanin pointed out. Can you take us there with your Susanoo? Itachi surveyed the distance and nodded gently. His Susanoo had no legs, but if he could hold them in his hand, he could move quickly and join the fight. Iyame rubbed her eyes as she stood up. Why was Alin screaming? She turned on the light, but the circuit breaker had clearly tripped. The chestnut-headed girl moved quickly into the house and opened the door to the little Uzumaki descendant's room. Smiling gently to reassure her, Iyame picked up her daughter and cradled her before turning her head out the window. Her dark eyes widened as she moved swiftly toward the glass to see a massive lava titan battling a nine-tailed fox. But what was happening? Kyuubi was supposed to be inside Naruto's body. She stifled a scream when she saw the fox just launched by a super powerful right hook. In her direction, Ayame started running out of the room to save her daughter, but it was no use. She knew it, soon the ground crumbled beneath her feet and she fell to the sound of Allen's screams as she waved her hands, clutching a fox plushie. When Ayame opened her eyes, she was no longer in her daughter's room. The child was still in her arms, and the plushie was still in the little girl's hands. The mother stood up and looked around, trying to pinpoint her location but couldn't get her bearings. When she felt a tremor, she realized she wasn't far from Konoha. The chestnut-haired girl approached the source of the tremors and saw that she was on the Hokage cliff, able to watch the battle from above, safe from the attacks. A groan made her turn her head. That's when she saw that her parents were there too, covered by a blanket and fast asleep. What exactly had happened? Naruto gritted his teeth as the demon's chakra vanished, leaving him a mere human being once more, albeit surrounded by a monstrously large Susanoo. Sorry, Naru, I can't transform anymore, but I can gather enough chakra to replenish your reserves, don't worry. Try to avoid spending too much, okay? Yeah, he can't use his volcano golem anymore, so he'll have to go back to close combat. I should be able to hold out for a while, the Uzumaki thought as he straightened up. He wiped the blood running down his chin and looked up to see a massive fireball bearing down on him. He swung his arm, moving his Susanoo, and easily dispelled the flames. Unfortunately, given the size of the blast, he had to deactivate it and back away. This guy isn't the professor for nothing, he's a real monster. The young man moved forward to distance himself and analyze the situation. But something told him that the situation was really not in his favor. Damn it, he still has his fucking golem, and his current reserves are bigger than mine. Clearly, Susanoo and Biju mode don't mix well. He jumped to avoid the golem's punch and formed a series of hand seals. Water release, tidal wave. The Uzumaki turned around and unleashed a veritable wall of water that struck the golem, cooling the lava and turning it into rock. He repeated this twice before creating some distance. Having solidified one entire arm, he was now certain that the right side was blocked. Damn it, I thought that would be enough at this point. But well, we'll have to move things along. He's dragging his feet. Not that I mind, but well, my reserves are slowly replenishing, but they're increasing. He's a Jinchūriki, so why are his stagnating like this? The Hokage wondered, continuing to have his golem attack. I'm losing more and more chakra. This kind of draining isn't good for my heart. Hiruzen mused. He reached into his pocket and smiled, relieved, at least he had his pills. He turned his attention back to Uzumaki, but the latter had vanished, no doubt taking advantage of the moment he looked away. Damn it, where is he? Hiruzen suddenly gritted his teeth, covering his ears. Good grief, what's that screeching sound? He looked around before spotting Naruto on a building. In his right hand was a strange, dark purple chakra ball surrounded by chakra rings, like the planet Saturn, while in his left hand was a turquoise chakra ball adorned with 4 white chakra blades like shuriken. What is this abomination? This is what my father could never do. The evolution of the Rasengan. Rasenshuriken and Dai Rasenringu. Shuriken orb and great spiraling ring. Naruto grinned, unleashing both attacks. His body suddenly radiated chakra from every pore, as if burning with bright orange flames. He raised his left hand and hurled it at the golem. Before the golem could even parry, the orb exploded against its stomach, creating a chakra dome within which chakra needles relentlessly demolished the creation piece by piece. The chakra globe was large enough to cover Hiruzen's entire torso down to his knees, devouring the lower part of his face. Hiruzen was forced to jump to avoid the blast, but Naruto had anticipated this and launched his second attack. The orb sped off, and the Hokage created a clone that pulled him forward, allowing him to avoid the attack. Which proved fortunate, because when he turned his head to see the attack, he saw that the explosion in the sky had blown the clouds above the village away. Unfortunately, he had once again lost sight of his opponent. This changed quickly, however, as the Uzumaki appeared before him, his arm armed and visibly charged with chakra, to the point that his arms seemed to be surrounded by lightning. Spirit-shattering thunder. Naruto sent his fist into the monkey's stomach, letting out a groan of pain before the chakra exploded at the tip of his fist, similar to the spirit-shattering thunder, while simultaneously combining the power of the earth-shattering thunder at its maximum strength. Hiruzen was thrown to the ground, hitting it with tremendous speed as Naruto stared at his fist, a layer of skin torn away by the sudden chakra discharge. Damn, I should avoid concoctions like this next time. But it's starting to work, his movements are slower. Damn, this couldn't have come at a worse time. The Hokage grumbled to himself. He reached into his pocket for some pills and pulled them out with a trembling hand. Damn, I'm shaking. This fight seems harder than I thought. Defeating you is almost impossible, you know, Naruto informed him. The fire shadow looked up at the Uzumaki. Taking these pills is pointless, I switched to sugar pills almost 2 months ago. Hirazen's eyes widened as he slowly stood up, realizing that his condition hadn't improved at all. It's called a placebo effect, you believe it works, so it does. Your mind can believe it, your body will follow. But everyone has their limits, right? A smile stretched across the monkey's lips as he looked at the pill in his hand. He swallowed the pill anyway and faced his opponent. You prefer to eat the sugar while convincing yourself it's good. That's your choice. No, I know who can help me. Hiruzen breathed simply, throwing a smoke grenade. When Naruto clapped his hands to create a shockwave, the old man had vanished. Damn. Itachi sighed, dropping to one knee. His Susanoo disappeared, stamina wasn't his strong point, and the Susanoo consumed far too much chakra to be worthwhile in the long run, especially for him. Rest, Itachi, Kurama suggested. Naruto and Hiruzen seemed to have calmed down, so we're safe for now. The Uchiha nodded gently as the other members of the group searched for a place to take cover. The battle between the two Konoha powers was devastating. They had reduced the Senju district to ashes and destroyed part of the surrounding area, continuing their advance to the cliff and destroying part of the village center up to the Hokage Tower. I think we should find a place where we can hide from the Anbu who will undoubtedly arrive, Itachi simply stated before looking up and seeing a group of 7 Anbu, as well as some members with different masks and outfits, also numbering 7. Anbu en route. It seems Danzo has some interest in this. Master Danzo has his own plans, and you are potential obstacles. An Anbu route indicated, looking at each of them before someone arrived. The Anbu suddenly stiffened in respect. Hokage-sama, do you need help? The fire shadow waved the offer of assistance away and calmly advanced toward the members of the enemy group. They had clearly split up, as he couldn't see Jiraiya, Tsunade, Neji, or the green-haired girl. Regardless, it was said that Maeko possessed a talent similar to her mother's. Maeko Senju. Heal me. The blonde froze for a few seconds, much like everyone else, they didn't understand the purpose of the maneuver. The Hokage seemed impatient, his opponent would arrive shortly, he was sure of it, so he had to act quickly, and he needed healing. His body had been so battered all at once that he couldn't go any further, especially with his heart in such a state. He suddenly approached, grabbed Saya by the hair, and placed a kunai against her throat. Heal me, or I'll slit her throat like a sow. Hokage-sama, an Anbu indicated. If I may, this girl you're holding has a massive amount of chakra concentrated in her lower abdomen, she's pregnant. If you have someone to threaten the fetus. Saya's eyes widened as she felt the coolness of the blade against her lower belly. The Hokage thanked him with a nod before applying pressure with his blade, gently driving the metal into the young woman's flesh. Well, heal me, the cage ordered. Heal me, or I'll kill her baby. Excuse me. A voice rose, somewhere between surprise and anger. The voice came from behind him, but he hadn't expected Naruto to be so fast. Hiruzen decided to play his trump card and turned to face his opponent. Saya, what's this all about? Nah, I'm pregnant, the brunette exclaimed, fighting back tears. She was a dead weight because of her pregnancy, her Sharingan was gone, and every time she drained too much chakra, the fetus reminded her of its presence. Hiruzen was taking advantage of the situation, and she hated it, it was beneath a man like him. I wanted to tell you, I'm sorry. Naruto closed his eyes. This was a terrible situation. But there's always a way out. Saya, I don't want you anymore. I don't care about this child, so you can go get an abortion, I won't be any worse off. Besides, your skill level is pathetic, you haven't improved in 3 years, and you're not even capable of being useful against a guy like him. He sighed in despair as Saya tried to staunch the tears streaming down her cheeks, her body burning with sadness but mostly with anger. She had no right to speak of their child like that. It was the union of their love. It's over. Besides, I wonder how it even started. If Sasuke hadn't asked me to take care of you, I think I would have left you to freeze to death in the cave. Saya let out a howl of rage and sorrow. This triggered exactly the desired effect. Her seal generated an immense burgundy flame that engulfed the brunette, pushing Hiruzen back. He managed to escape before being consumed by the flames of despair. Wait, the burgundy flames, Hinata thought. If I remember correctly, when they ignited for me, I was angry. Maeko was scared. Saya, was it because she was sad or angry? So, he said that to her on purpose. Naruto walked slowly and steadily towards the brunette, unfazed by the burgundy flames. She straightened up and threw a punch, which he easily blocked, looking her straight in the eyes. Saya, I think you should start to calm down, at least for the baby's sake. His angry expression gave way to profound surprise. The young man withdrew his hand and looked down at her lower abdomen. Take care of him or her, I'll be there soon, the redhead added, passing her. He gently placed his hand on the young woman's lower abdomen and a slight smile spread across his lips. Naruto and Hiruzen faced each other once more. The cage allowed himself a smile as he swallowed a pill, which an Anbu had gone to fetch just in case. You seem happy to be a father-to-be, Naruto. The redhead showed no emotion whatsoever and let his opponent sneer. I was happy to be a father too. But, having lost my first child, I know how painful it is. A blow to morale enough to lose a fight, you know. Naruto frowned at the remark. You wouldn't dare. It's shameful and degrading, but sometimes, we have no choice. He snapped his fingers, and the next moment, the Anbu were already upon Saya. The young woman's eyes widened as Naruto moved swiftly to stop them, but the Hokage positioned himself in the way, blocking the young man's path. If you want to save her, you'll have to go through me. The redhead slammed his foot into the ground, blasting through a layer of earth, and propelled himself forward. He covered the distance quickly, transforming for a moment into a flash of red. Hiruzen turned his head to see that Naruto would arrive in time if he kept going. With a sweeping gesture, he sent a pebble he'd retrieved earlier striking the young man's foot, causing him to stumble. Stop, Naruto! Kurama yelled in his mind. Don't let yourself be consumed, you idiot. He could save her. He could save them both. But not like that. To do so, he had to accept the abyss of darkness and power that remained within him. This unexplored facet of his body and mind, this dark, unknown, and powerful force. It didn't matter if he lost his mind, no one would ever hurt them again. Naruto closed his eyes and relaxed, letting the strange sensation wash over him like a powerful current. Kurama turned around to see that the black mist had filled the entire space and was now glowing in places, like a storm cloud streaked with lightning. She didn't feel it, something told her it was bad, very bad indeed. She couldn't understand why this power frightened her so much while simultaneously giving her this feeling of safety. What was this thing? Hello, Kurama. A voice rose from behind her. The orange-haired girl turned her head, her eyes widening at the person who had just appeared before her. No, it's impossible. A shockwave of rare intensity sent the Anbu flying like rag dolls. Naruto had arrived in time and positioned himself above the brunette, shielding her from the attack, but something else had taken its place to repel the enemies. The Uchiha looked up to see that Naruto seemed flustered, staring at his hands as if he were seeing them for the first time. A long silence fell over the area as the Uzumaki began to laugh. Nah, Naruto? Hinata asked weakly before the Uzumaki raised his head, revealing his eyes. His violet eyes with concentric circles. Hiruzen gasped and stepped back. No, it's impossible. Not you. This time, the Hokage had finally understood something. He had finally understood that he couldn't silence Naruto, that he never could. Because Naruto wasn't the kind of creature one could mold for a specific purpose, this pupil, the one that had just sprouted in his eyes. Few people had managed to unleash such power. In fact, the only person who had developed it without outside intervention, and therefore naturally, was the Sage of Six Paths. The very same man who had revolutionized the world, transforming it into what it was now. Naruto wasn't a creature to be molded to his liking, he was a unique being, the one who heralded change, the end of an era. He was the new possessor of the most powerful eye. Rinnegan. The Hokage breathed softly, strangely devoid of any fighting spirit. In any case, it was pointless, and now he knew it. Naruto's energy had surged back as if he hadn't even fought, and the aura he now emanated was on a completely different level. Naruto slowly approached his opponent and placed his hand on his head before forcing him to his knees. Hiruzen Sarutobi, 3rd Hokage of Konoha. Your life ends here, but I am in a magnanimous mood. Without you, I would likely never have reached such a level. Now tell me, do you want to die here like the dog you are, or live forever? Chapter 46, Epilogue. The 3rd Hokage still hasn't been found. And the Anbu who were with him. We have no news. A person doesn't just disappear like that. What about Maeko Senju and Heihachi Hyuga? Heihachi Hyuga is currently in intensive care, the doctors are still operating to preserve his vision. As for Maeko Senju, he's undergoing minor examinations, but it seems he emerged unscathed from his fight against the rebels. Speaking of them, do we know the whereabouts of Naruto Uzumaki, Jiraiya, Tsunade Senju, and the others? No, it appears the rebels took advantage of the Hokage Tower fire to escape. Do we know the extent of our losses? According to initial reports, the cursed district was destroyed, but it seems this wasn't a consequence of the battle between our Hokage and the demon. Otherwise, the city center and the cliff appear to have been drastically altered, as the faces of the 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Hawks have been defaced. As for the tower, we're unable to assess the damage. Any losses to our records? Impossible to determine. We have not yet finished removing the debris, we cannot yet conduct a thorough examination of the matter. I see, so you have nothing more to tell us. Dismissed. Very well, Danzo-sama, Kaharu-sama, Homura-sama. The Anbu disappeared, leaving the three advisors pensive, seated at a table in a round room, in a secret and secure location. They were currently reflecting on the events of the previous evening. The Hyuga clan had been attacked by two individuals. The main branch, the Soke, had been almost entirely wiped out, and the only members of the Bunk who had fallen victim to the massacre were those requisitioned as guards. Although the origin of the attack seemed unknown, the clan head, the sole survivor of this extermination, stubbornly remained silent. Clearly, he wished to exact his revenge himself. Unfortunately, it seemed the damage he had sustained was a bit too extensive for him to recover so easily, but the skill of the Leaf Village doctors was undeniable, who knew what they might be able to do for him. Meanwhile, the Senju clan had also suffered the horrors of a vendetta as swift as it was violent. Nearly the entire clan had been exterminated by the attackers, and some of the survivors had been imprisoned and then incinerated in the massive flame attack before others were killed by the Hokage's water technique. Like Hiyashi, Yukimura claimed to have seen no opponents and didn't understand where the attack had come from or how they had carried it out. But there was no doubt he would seek revenge and personally deal with those who had attacked the clan he had painstakingly united. Regardless, the advisors knew it would take more than that to stop Yukimura. Despite everything, what mattered most was the battle between Hiras and Sarutobi, the third Hokage of Konoha, and the Nine-Tails. Although this was only speculation, since the only people who could have identified him were Anbu, and they had all disappeared. Despite the damage inflicted on the village, very few people had woken up, as if they were all under the spell of a strange genjutsu broadcast over the loudspeakers, designed to plunge them into a deep, dream-filled sleep to prevent their minds from understanding what was happening and, by extension, from waking up. Even citizens living near the disaster areas claimed to have seen or heard nothing, except for a gentle lullaby. Either they had all slept, or someone or something had made them imagine something else instead. The most disturbing aspect of this whole affair remained the complete absence of any news of the third Hokage. The search continued, but no new lead was favored in believing that he had disappeared from the face of the earth. The only person the council considered the most likely rebel was Naruto Uzumaki. But they didn't know what to think. After all, if Kurama had truly been involved, then he must have died when the demon was unleashed. However, they couldn't forget that Naruto Uzumaki, Jiraiya, Tsunade Senju, and that strange girl with green hair had disappeared. Saya Uchiha was no longer there, and Maeko Senju wasn't counted among the victims of the Senju massacre, but she wasn't in the village either. Hinata and Neji Hyuga were neither victims nor present. On top of all that, reports from the border indicated the presence of a group of 7 people, including Itachi Uchiha, Kurama Senju, Sasuke Uchiha, and 4 unknown individuals. Did they have any connection to the previous day's events, or was it just a coincidence? Konoha was slowly recovering from a nighttime crisis. The cataclysm had ended, leaving a bitter taste of uncertainty and defeat. Somewhere along the way, Konoha had lost a battle without even realizing it. This meant only one thing to Danzo. "We must tighten our grip," the root leader declared. "Konoha has become mired in a kind of false peace. Our enemies have been waiting in the shadows since the beginning. Now, we must be ready to strike. Let's show that we won't be pushed around, and if they're looking for war, then they'll get it from Konoha." Hana Inuzuka sighed, rubbing her nose. Anko and Kurenai were at her side. The 3 of them were part of a search party looking for the Hokage. Currently, for reasons unknown, all searches were converging on this small park. A calm and serene place, about 15 trees nestled between buildings, like a private, intimate, and zen garden. Yet, despite the tranquility of the place, a certain unease seemed to linger. There was no trace of blood, no body, no sign of human presence or any kind of fighting, so why did everything lead here? Kakashi, Obito, and Rin arrived in turn. They too were searching for the Hokage and the Anbu, aided by the Silver One's summons. The 2 trios faced each other for a few moments before a collective sigh escaped all 6. "No trace then," Obito breathed, rubbing the back of his neck. He was trying to put on a brave face, but the third Hokage's disappearance left him unmoved. Ever since that man had ordered the destruction of his clan, he had lost all respect. It hasn't even been 24 hours and we already have no trace. This will be serious if time continues to pass. Kakashi observed the trees before shrugging. "We don't know what happened yesterday, so let's avoid hurting ourselves for now. We should wait until we have more information, what do you say?" The people present nodded gently before Hana left with her dogs, leaving the 5 ninjas bound to Team 8 together. "I don't think anyone noticed anything." Kakashi sighed, massaging the back of his neck. What? Kurenai asked. Kur-chan. Rin smiled. We've lived here long enough, haven't we? The brunette nodded, unsure of what the Uchiha lady was getting at. 15 people are missing, 14 Anbu, and the Hokage. Since when is there a park here? The two sensei of Team 8 raised an eyebrow. We're looking for 15 people, and there are 15 trees in a place that isn't supposed to exist, Rin pointed out. Then, she raised one of her fingers to show that, hidden in the bark of a tree, one could make out some of Hiruzen Sarutobi's facial features. I don't know how he did it, but whoever did this really had it in for the Hokage. People mustn't get that out of the way. This park will remain a park, understand? Obito asked, and the two kunoichi didn't know what to say. I see you don't really understand the reasons behind such a reaction. So, let me tell you a few stories about Konoha's past. Can you walk? Yeah. I'd rather you didn't. You haven't fully recovered. It's okay, Maeko, it's been 3 days. Fine, okay. But don't complain if you collapse on the ground right after. So, what did you want to show us? 2 years ago, Jiraiya and I passed by here. That was before I met you, Fu, and before I found Tayuya and Sasuke here. This is where my village is, my roots. My parents entrusted me with a task. I will found a new world. Create a new society that won't be based on rules that rely on the needs and desires of the biggest and strongest. For us, for my parents, and for those who will follow us, I want to destroy this institution that is the shinobi system, this amoral society that continues to perpetuate millennia-old hatred while spreading fear of those they don't understand or can't control. From this day forward, Nemesis's sole purpose will be to restore justice to this rotten world. However, I can't do it alone, so will you follow me? I think our presence speaks for itself, Naruto. The redhead is right, we're here because we believe in you. Hey, surprise, the redhead has a name. I don't know, I don't remember you telling me that when you ran off with my brother 3 years ago. Tayuya, I calmed down. She started it. What? Who cares? Naruto, why here anyway? We could have gone anywhere else. Because, before your very eyes, lies my domain, our domain. It will be here that we will build our new world, if we are to create a new order. We will do so on a sound foundation. On the ruins of Uzushio. The ninja villages gained power through the blood and tears of the Uzumaki clan. It is only right that we return the favor. And as a bonus, what is written on the root scroll. Now that this mission is complete, I will name the one behind the massacre of the Uchiha clan, as well as the one who wields the power of Root, Danzo Shimura. With the power of the council, he unleashed a massacre upon the Sharingan clan. On the night of October 13th. The fact that he decimated my clan is the absolute truth. The faces of my victims and my family will appear in my nightmares. Between remorse and sorrow, I apologize through these words. Itachi Uchiha.